Putnam County Board of County Commissioners for Tuesday, December the 10th, 2019 to order. I'd like to start with the invocation, which will be given by Michael Hudson, Christ Independent Methodist Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Commissioner Pickens. Please stand if you can.
Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we're so thankful that we can come into your presence this morning because we know that you are the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, the great I am, that you're the creator, the giver, and the sustainer of life, but you're also our Heavenly Father, that you sent your precious Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ, to come to be born in that manger, to live that sinless life, to die upon the cross of Calvary as the Lamb of God, that perfect sacrifice. Father, we thank you for the precious blood that forgives us of our sins, that cleanses us from all unrighteousness. And Father, we thank you for this wonderful time of the year that we celebrate the birth of the Messiah, the birth of our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. And Father, we look back into your precious word and we see the message that you gave to the shepherds. Let there be peace on earth. And Father, we do pray for peace. We pray for peace within our homes. Father, we pray for peace within marriages, within our community, Father, within our nation, within the world. And Father, we just pray, dear Lord, that you would touch our hearts, draw us ever so close to thee. Father, I pray a special blessing over those that are helping to keep the peace in our community. Father, we pray for our sheriff's department, for our police department, for our firefighters, our EMTs, and all of those who are serving so faithfully to keep us safe, and Father, to watch over and take care of us. And Father, we just pray that you will be with our community. Father, we need your hand of blessing upon us. Father, we look for your hand of blessing. May you bless us, may you keep us, may you watch over and take care of us. We pray these things in your precious, holy, and wonderful name. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Hudson, and thank you, Commissioner Pickens. The chair will entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the minutes of August 13th, Board of County Commissioners regular workshop, August 20th, Board of County Commissioners regular workshop, and October 22nd, Board of County Commissioner regular meeting.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. We're going to have to kill 2 minutes before we can go into the Port Authority.
Well, just recess.
Everybody's back, so anybody know a good joke?
How about the two vote no?
Jolene here.
Christmas time jokes.
Okay, okay.
Christmas time jokes. Can we go by my iPhone, or do we have to go by that phone in the back? Mine says 9:05.
You're the chairman, sir.
Okay, my phone says 9:05, so we're going to recess the Board of County Commissioners meeting and call to order the Port Authority meeting. The chair will entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion for approval. Do we have
I'll
a second?
second.
Have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Do we have any public comment on the Port Authority items? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment section. Under general discussion, does any of the commissioners have any comments to make under general discussion? Hearing none, I will adjourn the Port Authority meeting and call the Board of County Commissioner meeting back to order. We're going to start with a presentation. We're prepared now, correct? Okay. First presentation will be done by Commissioner Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I'd like to call Mr. Fran Hall and his wife Janice up to the podium with Nilda Siebert, our MSBU coordinator, and our Public Works Manager, Mr. Mike Nimitz. Would you join me here? Gentlemen and audience, many, many years ago, come on up, don't be afraid. You're going to be on TV, just think about that. Many years ago, I want to say back in 1996 area, Mr. Hall and I were president. I was a president of Landowners Association. I think y'all were secretary at the time. And the MSBU started. And as you well know, they're a municipal service benefit unit. And this was about grading our dirt roads in the estates. This was done on a pilot program from then Commissioner Dersher. And I'd like to turn over the microphone to Mr. Hall just for kind of a little brief history and a recap, and then I'll do the presentation, okay?
Wow. Commissioner Harvey, you do realize that this is a little overwhelming for an old guy like me. The commissioners authorized Kevin Dersher for a pilot program. $25,000 because if you went north of Route 20 in Interlochen, at that point in time, you had better have four-wheel drive. By the time we had used up the $25,000, and Kevin knew my background, and he sort of put me in charge of coordinating it, the residents were demanding to have their roads graded. And that resulted in the big meeting down at the high school. And at that point in time, we committed to the community through the Landowners Association that every road would be graded every month. And thankfully, we've been able to this day fulfill that obligation. Every road is graded every month. As Nilda knows, there are challenges. And the challenges are prioritizing the needs and balancing that with available funds. And that has been one of our big problems. But it has been a real gratifying for me, and I thank all of you for allowing me to, in a small way, serve our community. I really do. So that if it wasn't for our MSBU, I'm not sure what condition our roads would be in. We have neglected, in some respects, the clearing of right-of-ways. We haven't had those kind of funds, and some of the drainage has been neglected. But it has been a great thing for our community. I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Mr. Hall, on behalf of the board, in appreciation of Fran Hall for his dedicated service to the ILE MSBU South since its creation in 1996, presented by the Putnam County Board of County Commissioners this day, December 10th, 2019. Thank you. That's right. Today's Mr. Hall's birthday also. Happy birthday to you, sir. 85 years old. Good deal.
85 years younger.
We're settled in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is going to come from Parks and Recreation. Kevin, would you please come forward and present an appreciation plaque to Santa Claus?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners, administrative staff, and of course, the citizens of Putnam County. The Parks and Recreation Department provides vital services to the county and its residents, of course. The department, however, would not be as effective without the services that volunteers provide to us. Our restrictive budget doesn't allow us to pay or financially compensate every member who participates in programs with us. And for that reason, we rely heavily on our volunteers. We currently use volunteers as coaches for our sports programs. We use volunteers at some of our community centers to help manage programs and maintain viability in some of the outlying locations that we have. And we also use volunteers during our special events. And this brings us to the reason that we're here today is we have one specific volunteer who's volunteered his most valuable resource, and that's his time. Every year, Santa Claus comes down from the North Pole to entertain the kids of Putnam County at the Putnam County Library and takes time out of his schedule just for us to do that. And so today, I'd like to ask our Recreation Manager, Tess Simpson, to come forward and acknowledge Santa.
Come on, Santa Claus. In this age of technology and news that we live in, the innocence of children is stolen away much more quickly. In an editorial known as Yes, Virginia, There is a Santa Claus, written in 1897, Francis Pharcellus Church, a newsman at the New York Sun, wrote to Virginia the following: Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. He exists as certainly as love and generosity and devotion exist, and you know that they abound and give to your life its highest beauty and joy. Putnam County Parks and Recreation and library staff have been lucky to be able to keep Santa's magic in the lives of hundreds of children. Lucky for us, Santa agreed 6 years ago that the library was the perfect place to come visit with Putnam County's youth. He comes to our Cookies with Santa event in Palatka by way of the North Pole and patiently listens to them as they explain what they would like for Christmas, as they tell him about their elves on the shelf, and as they cry either out of excitement or fear of that jolly elf. The recreation and library staff work together to offer a photo on CD, crafts, movie time, face painting, and cookies during the participants' time at the event. One of the best parts is that Santa responds to each letter that the children write with one of his own to let him know he will be visiting on Christmas Eve. The elves of the recreation department and library system have been so grateful for Santa making time in his extremely busy schedule to participate in our program that we would like to take this time to thank him publicly for the joy he brings to us and to the families who come to visit him. We would like to present this plaque to Santa to honor our partnership, and we hope we can continue this Christmas tradition.
Thank you very much.
Is this when we get to tell Santa what we want for Christmas?
Yes, and you better behave because he does give coal.
Hey, listen, but I know you didn't ask her who was on the note.
Yeah, they are a few on the naughty list. Merry Christmas to all.
It is the fun part of this job. Oh, that's funny.
I'd like to be the first to say thank you to Santa for taking time out of his busy holiday season.
Yeah,
Come visit us at the commission.
thank you.
Okay, the next item on the list is a proclamation recognizing the 100th year for Zeta Phi Beta. Is it Zeta Phi Beta?
Zeta.
Zeta Phi, okay. And San Mateo, it's Zeta. Evidently not, because you're from San Mateo also, Mississippi. If y'all would come forward, I'll meet you at the podium. Commissioner Pickens is going to read the proclamation.
Funny.
Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated 100th year. Whereas Zeta Phi Beta was founded on the campus of Howard University in Washington, D.C. on January 16, 1920, and has served the Putnam County community for more than 58 years. And whereas Zeta Phi Beta is committed to providing continuous service to the community by assisting the youth, working with the elderly, and providing education on a myriad of topics that impact those encountered daily. And whereas Zeta Phi Beta participates in March of Dimes, voter registration drives, disaster relief drives, and scholarships to local graduating seniors seeking higher education. And whereas Zeta Phi Beta are known for developing strong partnerships that impact change for people when they need it most. And whereas Zeta Phi Beta seeks to build upon and have an even stronger impact in the local community, now therefore the Board of County Commissioners of Putnam County, Florida, hereby recognize Zeta Phi Beta sorority incorporated on this special occasion to celebrate 100 years of service and commitment to Putnam County, done, ordered, and adopted this 10th day of December 2019. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve this proclamation.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, have it. Motion carries.
That's right, that's your personal commission.
She's my personal.
You want us to stand back
here?
We'll stand back here. Y'all, yeah, there's a lot of y'all.
Miss Cynthia, would you introduce everybody when we get done?
Miss Cynthia?
Would you introduce everybody when we get done with the picture?
Do you need Matt's help?
Remember, she can delete your email.
Would you go to the podium and introduce everybody, please? One of y'all.
Okay, our chapter spreads probably over about 3 counties because we do such great things in Putnam County, and we have been doing them since 1964, right here in Putnam County. And I would like to introduce our president, Dr. Valley Holloway, and then I'm going to have her to go ahead since she's the president. You all know I talk, so.
Esteemed commissioners, I would just want to thank each of you for recognizing and proclaiming Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, the Zeta Mu Zeta chapter of Putnam County, our 100 years of excellence in sisterhood, scholarship, final womanhood, and of course, service. Here I have Sharon Flowers, Arnitra Lewis Grant, Dante Thomas, Marvis Christian, Mary Thomas, Annette Fennell, and Kim Hardy. And we thank you so much, and may you have a gracious and wonderful Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move into public comment. This portion of the agenda is designed to allow citizens an opportunity to bring matters to the attention of the board. It is not reasonable to expect that the board will engage in debate or deliberation about matters on which the board has received no prior information as part of the agenda. Please limit your time to 3 minutes. Public comment cards are conveniently placed at the meeting room entrance and should be submitted prior to the meeting to the deputy clerk who sits over here to my left, your right of the podium. I have a comment card here. The first one is Karen Chadwick.
Good morning.
Morning.
I have this map right here. I'm going to set up here. And I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of the drawdown, the Rodman drawdown frenzy that's going on right now. There's more people fishing out there than there are normally. I live about 5 minutes from Kenwood, so it's easy for me to just pop down there. There's people kayaking, camping, looking for springs. There's professional photographers out there taking pictures of all the birds, the wading birds that have come in to feed along the shoreline that's exposed now. And so I just want to make sure that you all know about that, and hopefully you're going out there and seeing what's going on. Everybody's real excited about it, all the way from, you see on this map, Eureka down here up to the dam. There's tons of people out there right now. And I was looking at, I do tours out there. Sure. I do tours out there, just sightseeing, not fishing. It's too much pressure for me. People want to catch fish, and it's too much pressure. But they love going out there and seeing the birds. And I'm booked. All of my nature-based tourism friends that I know that are tour operators, we're booked up into March when the water starts coming back up. Then everything will be flooded, and you won't see the birds and the alligators like you do now. You can't see the springs. You know, it's a totally different environment, of course, because, it'll be flooded. But I was looking at this article in the paper, and it talks about, this came out November 23rd, and it talks about nature-based tourism, ecotourism, how valuable it is for the county, and that people want to come here and see what old Florida looks like, what it looked like before Disney. And that's what this map is all about. There were 96 steamboat landings from Palatka to Silver Springs back during the steamboat era. And I really feel like if we could embrace the idea of restoring the river and creating something like the Bartram Trails did, now we're a trail town, designated trail town, people are coming here and spending money to see old Florida. And it's all right there, ready to be discovered again. And back in, when the state adopted the partial restoration plan, like over 25 years ago, this plan for the Greenbelt was created. And it's a huge area all the way from the St. Johns River to the Gulf. It's a big job for Mickey Thomason to manage all of that. He's an amazing guy. But anyway, it goes into all kinds of detail, all kinds of plans. If the river was restored, there's so many more recreational possibilities that would be available. And it's all in this book. They even have it, now it's 1992 costs, but they even have each project, they have, the estimated cost for all the projects. And I'd be happy to come in and talk to anybody about that. I think we've got a gold mine under a water lettuce patch out there. I think Putnam County is really missing a huge opportunity by just keeping it as it is. It's not like fishing would end. Locking out to the St. Johns River, that would end. Other than that, there's just so many benefits. I know with the trails, I know my time's up, but with the trails coming in, some people oppose that, and y'all had the foresight to realize, that's a good deal for the county. That's going to bring people in. And this really would too. If you go out there now, you'll see it. There's so many people coming out only because they only come every 3 or 4 years when there is a drawdown. We've got 5 groups coming from the villages just to come out and see the area. They don't come out there when the water's up. It's just a big open area. Fishing, there's a lot of fishing. There's still fishing now. So if anybody wants to get together and talk about this, I would appreciate it. I guess I can call and make an appointment. And there's also this project. This is a map project based on that. Anybody want to see one of those?
You'll have to give one to Sarah.
Give one to Sarah, she'll get it.
Okay. If you go to the website, the map will come up, and we've got all those sites. It's kind of like the Bartram Trails map, similar to that. And there's a lot of history and interviews and photographs. There's a lot of stuff on there. It'd be a great opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you. Next on the comment would be Douglas Hayes. Douglas, before you even start, keep in mind now, 3 minutes. Okay?
I cut 2 topics out just so I could be close to it. My name's Douglas Hayes, and I'm at 216 Hilltop Trail in Satsuma. Biggest thing I want to address today is our website for the BOCC. It is out of date. It is not mobile friendly. It has a download time of 4.8 seconds. And so we're running into 65% of the other websites are faster than our website. There's a complete scan that eventually I'll try to drop off to one of the higher-ups over there and to where we can make the improvements. I've been trying to tell you guys since 2016 that the doormat to our county is that website. When the off-the-beaten traveler enters the county, they're going to get on their phone and they're going to pull up the county to get an idea what's going on. And one of the main things you're running into is your slogan in regards to come see all the beauty that Putnam County has to offer. It gets cut off because you're limited by characters and in length. The other part is because the web page is shrunk versus mobile friendly, that you run into where the photo of the person in a kayak is cut in half. And so basically you see an arm holding something up and it looks rather phallic. You don't really get to see the concept. I'd like to offer a suggestion is a very brief map showing our trails and stuff as a welcoming, because people will know where to go when they address versus a photo of somebody in a kayak. The other part on the download issue, besides the size of the picture, is that immediately on a technical basis, it goes into a redirect. It redirects from Putnam County FL back to the same page. So it's going in a little circle technically. And so that creates more download time. The other part is that we're not up to date as far as having what they call an SSL certificate, which is your HTTPS, the security system. We don't have one. So we have an insecure website. So the other thing too is that in the real world, when you buy a web domain, you do what they call a trifecta. You buy .com, .net, .org. That way somebody doesn't pick up the other websites and create either a knockoff or a clone to steal your clicks or try to plagiarize your website in the marketing world and sell things that are similar to yours. And because you've only bought .com to teach you a lesson, I went ahead and bought .org and .net. I'm going to go ahead and build a website and show you how it's done. The current value of your web domains are $16,000 to $8,000 based on where you do the research. So you can buy those web domains from me for maybe $1,000. What do you think? Okay, the next thing is our I'll be brief on the last one. The next thing is the Amber Alert sign. It's been mentioned to me that there was a funding issue and everything like that. I discovered that instead of going through the Department of Justice and the Amber Alert system, because talking to Mr. Romay, is that due to today's technology, everybody has the Amber Alert on their phones. And so that they're not going to want to fund a animated sign. But it turns out that FDOT is enrolled in the Amber Alert system and the animated signs. And so anyway, I got a hold of somebody. I emailed them. I also forwarded it to the Deputy County Administrator, along with Ryan Simpson, who's the coordinator for all this. And there may be funding to not only get that Amber Alert sign repaired, but to get other ones along the Highway 17, Highway 20 corridor. In that process, there's what they call the Sun Guide information network. So like when you're going through Jacksonville and you see the big sign that's telling you road conditions and weather, everything but selling soap, that's part of the Sun Guide Transportation Network. We are not a part of it because in the old school, it was all hardwired and we're so wide open rural that wasn't cost effective.
Douglas, I appreciate your passion, but you need to wrap it up.
Okay. Anyway, with today's technology of being wireless, that one of the ways to be part of that loop of the Sun Guide information network is that there's a plausibility which will, in turn, will fund our signage. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Next on the,
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I get a question. Doug, can I ask you a question real quick, going back to So the Putnam County, the .com website that we currently have up, what would it cost to have an app made that would be available, so if somebody did Google Putnam County as you're coming through or search up, that they would come up with the app?
Primarily, what you need to do is search engine optimization. And so that way you're high up on the list. You have no meta tags, have no titles assigned to to your different web pages. And that's the biggest thing, is so that way when, if you do proper meta tags and keywords, then when somebody looks at trails, all of a sudden we're in the algorithms.
Right.
And then the other part is you're competing with the fact that there's other Putnam counties. And so then the length of download and all these algorithms, we're usually about 3 or 4 down. And at the same time, a lot of times, either as of late, the tax appraiser's office shows up, or the jail log, which is not really the best welcoming to Putnam County. So what you do is what they call backlinking and text linking, to where when somebody wants to go to the jail log, it'll run through and give a click to the main page. And that way it keeps you high up on the rankings.
What would that cost, my question? And what would the cost
A
be?
little
to develop an
education
app?
with your webmaster, or a new webmaster at $50,000 a year that might be up to date.
That would be up to Bob.
That would be
Drain
at
the
the bottom of
swamp.
the list,
And-
50,000 a year, yes.
And I guess with, that could be attributed to tourism development. So I'm just, question that popped in my mind was, we've got that $1.2 million sitting around. And if what he's saying is correct, and people are searching for Putnam County and getting, I know there's a Putnam County, New York, correct?
Yeah.
If that's popping up first, maybe we should try to invest
In Georgia,
in that.
too.
Georgia?
Yeah, Putnam County, Georgia.
Okay. I just a thought. Thank you.
Like I said,
Douglas?
as a whole, it's not a cost of an app or anything special. It is proper training and knowledge of, or newer knowledge of your current webmaster.
Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next to speak is Nicole Grace with Keep Putnam Beautiful.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Nicole Grace of Keep Putnam Beautiful. Our address is 205 North 2nd Street in Palatka, Florida. I wanted to say thank you. We had a cleanup last week where a mom, on December the 6th, mom came into our office and said, who do I talk to help get the cigarette butts out of our playground? My daughter picked them up, and she has I think she's 13 months old, but ambulatory and picking things up, and she wanted to know what she could do. And luckily she came to my office, so she didn't hit any government offices, and I said, I can set you up. She had a bucket, she has grabbers, she has bags, and they've been out there cleaning up, and on the 6th we went out and kind of did a table and got her a little bit more attention. Winston Fletcher came out and talked to her about reporting things to our offices, and it was very successful. I found out she'd actually been doing it for a while, so we only got 2 small kitchen bags full of just debris down there. The most we picked up was Spanish moss off the tree, so that was a great success, and I know she's not here to thank personally, but she did it herself. She recruited other people to help her and just went out and did it. So that's what Keep Putnam Beautiful wants to see, and I know that most of you have saw in the paper that there was an opinion piece about doing the same thing, getting out on our roadways, adopting those highways, and picking up the litter. So we were very encouraged this week and wanted to say thank you to all of our citizen volunteers that go out and just do. Also, we enjoyed the Interlochen parade, and I owe some cans to Interlochen for food because I forgot them at the office. So I will be bringing them in. And that is, it was Puck Puggy Playground downtown. And that was all I had, but I encourage everyone, if you know someone that has a concern like that, call us. I am more than happy to either be at the office and provide the materials or even drive out to go and bring them to those people. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
We're going to move into the consent agenda. Is there any items that the commissioners wish to pull? I'll start with Commissioner Pickens.
I have none.
Harvey,
I have none, sir.
Commissioner Goddard,
I have none.
Commissioner Rawls,
I have G, J, and M.
M.
M as in Mary. That was the add-on.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to approve all but these three items.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to approve the consent agenda items A, B, C, D, E, F, and let me turn the page here, H, I, K, and L.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Okay, item G, Commissioner Rawls.
I had a question. So we're asking for $500,000 for a grant for the East Plaque drainage, but what happened to the $500,000 that we were awarded?
That's what this is. This is the $500,000 that we were awarded.
This is the $500,000.
This is the $500,000 that we were awarded. It's going through
Okay,
the
so
paperwork.
we're going to put it to work now.
That's right.
Okay,
We
all right.
couldn't until then.
Okay.
So with this
The way, when I first read it, I thought we were applying for another grant for another $500,000.
Are.
We're applying for another $500,000.
Yeah, because we asked for.
happened to the
we
first
a-
$500,000?
We haven't got it yet. Here it is. They gave it to us, but we
Right.
haven't received it. This is receiving the money. So
Okay.
now we can go spend the first one. The second $500,000, they made a comment they would try to fund us for 3 years.
Okay.
In a row to get the amount of money we need to finish the project that we're trying to do. So this is number one.
How does this tie
Number
to a-
two's been applied for. Number three, hopefully will be applied for next year.
How does this tie to the appropriations that we requested? Because we requested additional appropriations for East Plaque drainage as well, correct?
Yes,
This year's-
for next year.
Is that tied to this, or is that in addition to?
This is last year's appropriation that's already been given, and this is receiving the appropriation.
No, I'm saying the million that we asked for in this year's appropriation, is this a second two-thirds of this? Or is that in
Yes.
addition to?
Yes.
Okay,
No,
okay.
it's in addition to this.
So the total would be about 2.5 million?
No, about $1.5 million is what we're asking for the second million,
Right,
in the current cycle.
right.
If they knock it back like they did last year to a half, then we'll ask for it again, because we need about $1.5 million total to do the projects identified at this time.
So, forgive my ignorance, but, so once the legislature approves the appropriation, we have to then apply for a grant?
You have to do the paperwork after the appropriation, and then after you finish all your paperwork, then bring it before the board to approve that we're gonna receive the grant. And then even though it was an appropriation, but this really has nothing to do with the next cycle. It's just, that would be money in addition to. This was already been appropriated, and this is just receiving the appropriation.
Okay, just real clear.
Correct?
Clear as mud.
That is correct.
Okay, I'm cool with that.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of item G.
I'll
Second,
second it.
Have a motion and a second. Anybody discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it, motion carries. Okay, item J, Commissioner Rawls.
okay, item J, I've read through this several times, and each time I come up with different questions. I guess Mr. Nimitz may want to come up, but it looks to me like one of two things happened. So, was the original design intent to have a 2-inch tap off of that main?
Okay, I'll address it, and I don't want Mr. Nimitz up here at the moment. I'd rather have Ms. Young to come up.
What was the original design intent? Was it to have a 2-inch
Okay,
tap?
I'm gonna try. I'm just trying to make sure I do this in the proper manner. And I'm gonna let Ms. Young kick in at any time she wants. Basically, at one point, this contractor was asked to stop work on all work. Until the paperwork could be reviewed. Okay, so this project at that time was complete,
Right,
with the exception of his as-built and delivering those as-built to the engineer. And the engineer then sending it to, as approved, sending it to DOT to close out the DOT permit. That's all that's remaining in the job. Once the project was looked at by staff, they determined that there was no clear approval for the change order of the $87,000. So staff called the engineer and asked the engineer where it came from, because in the meantime, our then Public Works Director retired. And so we called the engineer, and the engineer said that the then Public Works Director required him to change the plans and add this change order to it. And so he did that and then sent the change order on to the subcontractor. They couldn't find an approval, but the work has been done. So it makes me, if the work was done and the man was verbally told to go ahead, I know that's not in our procurement procedures, but I don't know that we should penalize the contractor for going ahead if he was verbally told to go ahead, which is, he claims that's what was done. So basically, yes, it's not clean.
No, this isn't going to my question.
Okay.
My question is simple. The original design intent was to have a 2-inch tap off of that original main, correct?
But
It's a yes or
then-
no question.
Wait a minute now.
Okay, I know, but let me.
Then the Public Works Director went and had the engineer
Okay.
redraw it to what it is, and
So
they gave the 2-inch back.
This is where my BS meter starts to scream, because it is in the interest of the engineer to say he was told. Do we have any documentation that says he was told to redesign? Because if there was a bust, and it looks like in the plans.
You really, Jeff, you're in this business. You really think an engineer went on his own and
So,
redesigned the project
I've
without
not seen
direction?
I've not seen anything that says that we requested the
We
engineer.
haven't found anything, that's correct.
So you just said, do you really think an engineer would do this without being told? And I'm saying if the engineer put a 2-inch tap off a 16-inch main and then realized he made a mistake, that's a bust. There's a 10%, this is my heartburn. You have a 10% bust on a job. And typically, errors and omissions insurance would cover this. That's what I wrote on here. Why not E&O for this bust? Why don't we go after the engineer of records, errors and
original-
omissions insurance to cover this?
Is my understanding that the original design called for a 2-inch, but they were not in the original design gonna take the 4-inch across the highway for the additional volume. The 2-inch would have done it to a certain point. Now, that's just my understanding of it. And so the engineer would have no reason to deceive and say that the then Public Works Director came in and told him to change it. He doesn't care what's put in and what isn't. The engineer doesn't, and the contractor doesn't care if he does that part of the work or not. I mean, the change order was valid. It was for work done. That's been checked, that the work he actually did has been done on this particular project. So the county has already made the decision through procurement to let him finish this project and go do it. It's just a matter of, do we pay him for the work he did or not? That's where we're at.
So here's some more of my heartburn then. Assuming that the original intent was to put the 2-inch and that was fine, why did we pay for the 8-inch, and why is it 10% cost? I think looking at his costs in this are excessive. Normally, in a governmental job, you have an agreed-upon amount of field overhead, office overhead, profit. We don't have any supporting documentation to show what he paid for that pipe, for the tap, for the
Commissioner,
boring.
at that particular time, the county was using, which they're not at this time, but at that particular time, they were using continuing services contracts to price this work out.
But a continuous services contract doesn't allow somebody to come in and charge 300% markup.
It allows them to charge whatever the continuing service contract was.
The continuous service contract that I've seen a copy of is unexecuted and void of any information. It doesn't have quantities, it doesn't have anything like that. I participated in a continuous services contract, as of yourself, so I know what's required. I've not seen any of that documentation that shows this.
And that's why it's before the board today. Do we want to pay the man for the work he did or not?
I don't think we should pay, I don't think we should pay a 10% difference. The total water main installation was 900 grand, and we're gonna pay almost $90,000 for a change order where he gives us back $7,000 and bangs us on the other side for the rest of it. I think the answer should be no. I think we should make them prove what their total costs were and pay them reasonable overhead and profit on top of the total cost. But I don't think we should approve this until he can prove to us what he actually paid for for the materials. I'm looking at a lot of different jobs that they did, and I can tell you right now, we have paid an enormous, I'm talking about over $1 million.
I'm not
these
talking
guys.
about other stuff. We're not going there today. We're staying on subject. And
Same-
the subject is the 87. You
If a
want to pay
leopard
it or
doesn't
not?
change his spots, this leopard has been ripping our public off for a long time. This board has allowed
That's a
it.
bold statement.
That is a very bold statement, but I can back it up. So I think the faster we get to the bottom of all this, the better off I will feel. We let the man retire and resign instead of firing him. He should have been fired. I was told Sunday
We need
by a
to
contractor
All right,
that
we're not, I just told you, we're not going there, Commissioner
you may not want to
Rawls.
go there. I
We're
think it's in
not
the
going there,
public's best
Commissioner
interest
Rawls.
to know
Haven't you
what the
been
truth
asked to not
is.
go there?
No, I've not been asked to not go there.
Okay.
What I was asked to do was not mention specific names.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is we allowed somebody to resign instead of firing him. He could go and hurt another county as he did our county.
We need to be careful about
Yeah,
the
we
language.
need to be real careful, and that's off
We
subject.
haven't
That
been
is off
careful, And we
subject.
have cost our citizens a
Commissioner
lot
Rawls,
of money.
please, that is off topic. Please.
I don't think we should vote this up. I think we should
Well,
vote this down
that is
and
your
have them
opinion. If you
prove
get two other commissioners
them
on here to
prove
go along with you, that's
they
what
have
we'll
this in
do.
it.
Does anybody else have any discussion in this matter? Okay,
I'd like to hear what she has to say.
okay.
Just from procurement standpoint, staff recommends the retroactive approval. Procurement did reach out to the engineer of record and did verify that the change in work has been completed at 100% minus the site, the as-built surveys that we do need in order to do that. So staff's recommending approval of this matter, and it's before you today.
Have you attempted to find out what his total cost was on that project and compare it to what the change order is?
No.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a comment, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I don't like this any more than you do, Commissioner Rawls. When I read it, it gives me heartburn, and not just heartburn, it's disappointing that agency heads can decide upon their own to do whatever they want to do without coming to the board. I believe the culture is changing here to make that not happen again, and I believe we have safeguards in play to make sure that that doesn't happen again. One thing I do think is good, though, it does benefit what the work they did, benefits that community to the tune of $87,000, Mr. Rawls. I'm not sure that that's correct either. I'd like to see some numbers. I'd like to see them justify that, frankly, and I'm not opposed to what Mr. Rawls is asking based on that. I think maybe that would send a message that, you know, if you were told to do something, you probably should have took a look at it a little bit easier, and maybe the hard costs need to be really looked at on that. But, you know, I know this is a difficult time, and I realize that, so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Goddard.
Is this urgent that we have to approve this today? Can we get these numbers and look at what actual cost was to make sure that, yeah, is this urgent?
The urgency is if we don't get the DOT permit closed out by the middle of January, I think it is, then the DOT permit goes away and we need to get it closed out. You know, as I said earlier, I think the man's done the work and he was given verbal approval. Anybody that works in the construction business knows for a fact that if one of your biggest customers tells you to go over and do that, and I'm gonna get the paperwork to you, then in 90% of the times, if you like working for that customer, you're gonna go over there and do that, because if you don't, somebody else is gonna get the work next. So personally, I think the guy did the work. I realize the whole issue is a whole bigger issue, but this particular project was only stopped because of the overall picture. And the guy did the work. And so if the engineer hadn't made the comment, that, that the then Public Works Director had come into his office and required him to change the plans and add this other work to it. And then it was given from then to I see you jumping, Tim. Give me a minute. I'll let you speak. It was given to the contractor from the engineer. Anybody that has any idea what goes on in the construction world knows that a contractor's not just gonna go start doing work on his own, and he's not gonna tell the engineer to change something. The engineer, which is a separate individual, made the comment that's where he got his direction from, was the then Public Works Director. So this guy's done the work, he's hung up, he's in the middle, we owe him 10%. They've made the decision they're gonna allow him to do the as-built and try to get the DOT permit figured out, but they don't have written approval of the change order. So the only thing that we're trying to decide this morning, do we pay the man for the work that he's already done or not?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Who paid the engineer?
County?
Who's supplying the as-built drawings, the engineer or the contractor of record?
No, excuse me, the engineer has to, sign off on the as-bills after they're turned in by the contractor and then sent to DOT to close out the DOT permit.
So has anything been turned over to the engineer of record as far as as-built?
No, we stopped him before he could get them done.
How much was the difference, how much more did the engineer charge for the redesign of the boring?
He didn't charge any extra.
So my point is, and this just sounds highly suspect, that an engineer, out of the goodness of their heart, redesigns a portion of the water main and says, I'm not gonna charge you anything for it. All I'm saying is, this may not be the.
I'll answer as we go, Jeff.
Honestly, sir, I'd rather be hearing this from staff, but I'm not going to hear it from staff. So I think the public has a right to know how the wheels came off the train. At some point in time, somebody allowed this kind of contract to go into motion, allowed this kind of abuse to happen. And I think it stops right here. I think we should challenge these people to come in here and prove what they actually have in the ground.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner Pickens.
Yeah, it was approved by a department head, correct?
The then Public Works Director.
This change in good faith, working for Putnam County.
To the best that we've been able to discern,
Okay, not
yes.
saying that policy was followed, but
Yes.
we're in that situation where, I think, they've completed the work, whether it was too high or not.
What's worse is we went over budget.
He didn't interrupt you, Commissioner.
We verified that the work has been complete, minus the as-built. That has been verified.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And we have things in place now, so this will not happen again.
Yes, sir. And as reviewed, we have, with all relevant members, we've also gone back through training and education about how we would handle future instances to make sure we stay within the procedure.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Even though public comment is over, Mr. Hotelling, would you like to make a comment? Please keep it short and direct because we're not in public comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Turner. I appreciate it. Tim Hotelling, 105 Riverside Way, San Mateo. I've heard three things up here. You're talking in two directions. Mr. Rawls is talking about money and whether or not there was fair pricing. You are talking about whether the work was complete. That's two different ball games in my mind. We've been through this with two previous public works directors, and the citizens have been fleeced in each case. We need to identify what was wrong so it doesn't happen, so that there's a system in place so that we have reasonable pricing. And personally, I think you all should let the public know that this agenda item is a little bit more for transparency, because anybody looking up there doesn't quite understand what you're doing, and it makes it look like you're not trying to bring everything out. And I know y'all haven't anything, but the agenda item says, during on-site construction, unbeknownst to the county administrator, the Public Works Director directed engineering firm and authorized a contractor to engage and work outside the original scope. And I know that there's all kinds of contract law that identifies that. And so that you've got this scope thing, you have price things, and I tend to agree with Mr. Harvey that y'all need to have a little more information. I get a little nervous when you're talking as if you're you're taking the place of best evidence and not having individuals up here that actually know. I don't know. I'm real curious to know how you found out some of the things that you found out, but that's all. There's just
Stuff I
you
found
could-
out.
Yes, sir.
I
You-
found out through Ms. Young. She's the one that talked to the engineer. She's the one that ran the different scenarios down. That's how I found out.
Okay, well, you've done lots of, it's your business also. Did you not ask about prices?
Sure I did, but if it was, I'm not gonna debate you, Tim.
Yeah, I'm just
that.
saying that
I understand what you're
there's
saying.
other things
All I'm
involved
saying-
and.
What I'm
and-
saying is the way that I'm looking at it, and I understand what you're saying, and I understand what Commissioner Rawls is saying. We may be charged too much, but but the man did the work. He billed us per his contract that was in place at the time, continuing services contract that was in place at the time. Now, since then, we don't use continuing services contracts unless it's an absolute emergency, correct?
That is correct.
And so we're not doing that. So we are taking steps to make this happen. But at that particular time, the then Public Works Director, who has since retired, he approved this verbally. I'm just telling you he did.
Well, and-
So we're gonna leave the contractor hanging out because we do or do not or whatever. Something else might be going on. That's not fair. And I'm
Get his
sorry,
actual
but I think
cost.
it's a fair thing to do.
But the point being is, you said people don't come around and look over your shoulders, essentially, and they do if in fact these guys are up to tomfoolery and charging 300%. I heard more than fair market price, and that's the duty and
I
responsibility
don't know
for other
that's
staff.
I don't know that I don't know
Well,
that that's an accurate statement.
I don't
Find
either,
out.
but,
You know,
but,
so,
but
well-
it's an unverified at this point, and that's all
One
I'm
of the things
saying.
is as-built, I understand from talking from General Services, is one of the things the as-built are gonna show is exact quantities of the additional stuff that was added. So it may be that it's up or down a little once they send a surveyor in there and get the exact quantities of what we use. So, anyhow,
So you're
yes.
planning on sending a surveyor in to do those things?
Typically you would.
got to for the as-built,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
Again, in all the stuff that I've looked, I've not, and I don't know this, it's not my business, it's your business. I've not seen anything to verify prices that have been laid out. There just says, well, I want $1,000 for this widget. And I don't know that we double check to make sure that from their suppliers that that's a reasonable markup. And I think that's one of the main points. And you're talking prices and work. Yeah, the work was done, but were the charges right?
Thank you, Mr. Otelling. Yes, Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Harvey, excuse me.
Julianne, I have just a couple of questions. I know we're trying to rewrite the procurement thing. How would a contractor know? Because I agree with Commissioner Turner. How would he know, hey, go do this and we'll clean it up later? Unfortunately, the Public Works Director is not here because I would have liked this day of reckoning to come. There's no doubt. That would have been on my agenda. But how can the contractor, can we put it in our bid documents or in our contract that any change orders are your responsibility if they don't have the approval of the Board of County Commissioners? How would we protect ourselves and the contract going into the future now?
It is in both at this time, for sure.
Okay.
And it, again, where we are today is not a measure of where we were yesterday is not a measure of where we are today. So
I agree.
it is in the bid. It is in their agreement for services contract. It talks about changes in scope, it talks about changes in time, it talks about changes in costs, and the correct procedure to go through. Again, a large part of that is on our departmental staff being trained, and as we reviewed earlier, we have gone back through that. And following approval of the new procurement code, we'll go through it countywide again, because every time you make a change, you want to bring all those people back in. So it's really a matter of education on both sides. Contractor side, the contract language is in there. County side, those end users having direct contact with those contractors need the same education.
So going into the future, if somebody was to say, hey, go out there and do this, and you would be able to say, we're not going to pay that change order because you didn't follow the contract and you clearly read the contract.
Well, ultimately, that would be a legal,
decision.
civil matter, but we could certainly
Stand on it.
reinforce the fact that on both sides, both the employee side and the contractor side, that we've done our due diligence to make sure that there is no ignorance of the law or of the clauses.
All right. I'm taking these great leadership classes, and I've just finished it up about how to communicate critically. I failed miserably Friday night after my class Friday, but I'm going to try to do something better today.
Okay.
According Mr. Rawls, and listening to his comments, and Commissioner Turner too, which I agree. I mean, none of us probably sit up here like this at all. Is there any room available to go back and maybe get a third party to say, this is really what the cost should have been? And is there any legal ground, if we did that, to stand and say, we kind of feel like you're overcharging us based on this, we feel like we should be paying that, and that's where we're going to go forward at the future. I mean, is that more legal, or?
I'm going to defer that to legal.
Okay, Mr. De Niro?
Your last
been
meeting?
promoted.
I think I've been promoted.
How to get from that?
Wish I had a
lawyer
salary.
to Mr.
Yeah.
DiNovo?
Well, you
Come
know.
on, do your best, De Niro, go ahead. You talking to me?
Yeah, there's, what you have here is a situation where apparent authority, you've got somebody who at one point had authorized it and they were allowed to rely on that. I think that with the new procedures in place, as Julianne mentioned, that, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So, they know what's in their contract documents, they know what's in our procurement code. Okay, so if they were to go ahead and act on a verbal command without getting, following the proper procedures, there would be a problem getting paid at that point. In terms of this particular agreement, there's the problem, of course, is the apparent authority, because we didn't have those procedures in place, at the time. That's, once again, that's a question. I mean, it would be, I'm sure you could probably get a third party to go ahead and do some kind of analysis as to whether these are true costs or not, or whether they're legitimate. I don't know that it would necessarily impact in terms of the ability of the contractor to rely on the verbal representations that were made.
You didn't help me out a bit. Thank you.
That's my job.
Mr. Rawls?
All right, to Mr. I won't say De Niro, DiNovo. Mr. DiNovo's point, we really don't need a third party if we request them to provide their invoicing from, they paid an outside company to do the tapping, it says. They paid for pipe, they paid for fittings. That's easy to get. Am I hearing that the county had a contract out that did not require written proof or written change orders prior to work being done?
No, you're not hearing that.
Okay, so they knew when they signed their contract that any change orders required written documentation. Was the contract executed?
Yes.
Because I've not seen an executed contract. I'd like you to send me a copy of the executed contract for this.
For this?
For this and for the master's, because this doesn't fall under continuing services.
Correct.
This was a separate bid, correct? Okay. I know what you're saying as far as, that the staff is now educated, but to Mr. Hotelling's point, This is the second time a Public Works Director has been asked to leave for this type of stuff. And
I don't believe, I don't know anything about the
Okay.
Public Works Director
So-
being, so just, I want to make sure that what I'm giving you is factual. So I know nothing of prior acts. I can
Let's
tell
stick to
you
this
where
then.
we
Let's
are
stick to this.
today.
Two things were brought up. We got the continued services contract. I'd like to get a copy of that in its executed form. I'd like to see what the quantities are. But that has nothing to do with this contract because this one was a separate bid, which y'all had 5 respondents.
Correct.
I spoke to somebody who was in the pre-bid, and she said that they did not bid on this because the county tried to shotgun this thing through. She said it was between 13 and 15 people that went to the pre-bid meeting, and only 5 people responded because the bid was trying to be put out in a haphazard manner. So I know where we are. I know how we got here. The question is, from a transparency perspective, okay? I'm sure that everyone would love if we would just sit up here and keep our mouths shut and not tell the public anything that ever goes wrong in the county. But the truth is, until we start getting this out to the county, we can't be transparent, and we can't have the full faith and support of our citizens if they know that this stuff is going on. I was told by this young lady that owns a site development company that it was public knowledge on the street that when Mr. Tompkins came to work here from St. Johns County, that he had the same thing going on there. And I
Mr. Rawls,
wonder.
please, stop
wonder
making
if-
accusations.
I'm not
We're
making
talk- we're-
accusations. I'm
Do
just
you want to
repeating-
give out the 87 or not?
What
Vote.
I want to do is I want to get
Going off
the truth
in
out to the
another
public.
direction.
So, how do we avoid this if we ourselves perpetuate this by allowing him to resign and retire instead of terminating him and then letting the world know this guy's a bad actor? That's what should have happened. So,
Yeah, I would just really instruct the board to focus on on your particular agenda item and not get into peripheral issues. Really, the sole question before the board today is this particular contract and this particular contractor.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion. Do you want to approve this or not?
I'll make the motion that we approve this item.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's 3-2, passes. Sarah, did you get who voted with? Okay, thank you. All right, next item on the list is item M, Commissioner Rawls.
I pulled this for one simple reason. When I was reading the resolution, give me just a second to pull that up here. It starts off by saying the board has selected BGK to provide legal services. You know, I don't take offense to this, but in some way I do, because I wasn't consulted prior to the selection of BGK. It was imposed on me and on this commission that they've been selected. But this says, whereas the board has selected. And, I just think that's kind of misleading in a way that,
Well, it hasn't, number
unless I
one.
missed a meeting.
Number one, it hadn't been signed yet.
Okay.
So that's that is what's been presented today. The county administrator and the chairman could have signed this contract without coming to the board because it's under our level of authority. This is one of those items that both of us agreed was not something we should take on without bringing to the board for approval. So that's the reason it's before the board today, even though we had the authority to do it without bringing it to the board to make sure that everybody knew that these are the interim guys.
That has nothing to do with the language that's written. The language written says the board selected.
But I understand, but after today, you will have selected, but it's not selected yet.
This says, whereas the board has selected. That's not after today, that's current. And
Whoever
so-
put that in there was incorrect, because that's why we're bringing it to you today, is for your approval, even though we could have approved it without your.
I've stated before, I think the board should have input in the selection of who our attorney is.
Well, that's why they're
I don't
here.
know these guys from Adams House Cat. I just,
There he
Mr.
is.
Commando, I just read him for the first time.
Come
right.
up here and let the
don't-
administrator introduce you.
But it doesn't There's no introduction to the board. We didn't deliberate this, we didn't discuss it. It was just, here they are, this is what you're going to approve, so there you go. So, anyhow.
Mr. Suggs, would you please introduce him?
Sure, I'll be more than happy to introduce. This is Mr. Rich Commando. He is with the law firm of Bradley, Garrison, and Commando. They're out of Orange Park. Mr. Commando has a wealth of municipal government experience as well as a county experience. He's been the attorney for Baker County, I believe it is now, for 6 years. Their law firm has multiple years of municipal service, and they come highly recommended. And we're bringing the law firm of Bradley, Garrison, and Commando in front of you this morning for your review and approval on this agreement. The chairman is absolutely correct. We had the authority to do this, but we thought it would be within good faith and appropriate to bring the agreement to the Board of County Commissioners this morning. So if you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer them.
I already said we'll try to meet with Mr. Commando next month. So what would have been nice would, if we could have gotten a resume ahead of time. I'd like to see what deliberation was done. Did we look at 10 different firms and select one? Was it just, look, here's a good one, Baker County's using them? I mean, Baker County's a small county. They're about 25, 30,000 people, 500 square miles. If it's our responsibility to select an attorney for ourselves, I really think in the future, we should have some input as to who's hired. Maybe have one-on-one interviews with each commissioner prior to selecting a county attorney and not just giving the authority to the county administrator. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I kind of expounded earlier about my concern. You were able to dissolve that about the availability. I like the fact that our administrator did go out and find a law firm that has your expertise in it. I like the fact that now we have two different law firms handling what this board has been wanting to do for a long time. It's kind of separation of duties. I look forward to working with you in the future and making yourself available to us, not 24/7. We're not going to call you late at night. I don't hope we know. I might call you early in the morning, though. But as far as that goes, I really appreciate it. And Mr. Suggs, thank you for bringing this to our attention.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of item M.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you. I look forward to working with
Thank you for coming today. Yes, sir, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is number 7 on the list, clerk report.
Mr. Chairman, we have no items, but since this is our only meeting this month, I would like to, at the end of the year, express my thanks to all of you for working with the clerk's office as your comptroller and your clerk to the board. Looking forward to a successful year next year, and we stand ready to assist in any way we can. Yeah. Okay, and then Susan has some.
I just wanted to say, just to kind of keep you updated, we are still collecting our FEMA money. Since October 1st, we've collected another $407,000 of FEMA money. The remainder of FEMA money is the catch-up with the increased share that the state got. We've not received that yet, but I just kind of wanted to keep you informed as to that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We're an hour past our public hearing minimum time, so good. We'll move right into the proposed resolution for the 2019 uniform method of collecting non-ad valorem special assessments. Who's going to take this one? Terry?
You want to take it or not? Okay, this is just nothing more than housekeeping, Mr. Chairman, that we approve this each year so we can utilize the uniform method of collection, which is the tax bill, to collect all the non-ad valorem assessments that are posed by Putnam County from year to year.
Okay, what is the, what would the board like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Sure.
When I first got here, I didn't like all the language in there about all the things that we could or couldn't do. But my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Suggs or Ms. Papel, if we go to enact any of the other ones that we currently don't do, the ones we do is fine, but if we have to, let's say there's a new one, we have to go through the public hearing process. We have to go through the public notice process. I don't like the language sometimes, but, you know, I understand the formality, but I also understand that no new fees will be imposed on any public without going through the due process that the law requires us to do. Mr. Chairman, I move approval of this item.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Commissioner, before we move
Yeah, we
approval,
got
I've
it.
got to open it up for public comment.
You're correct, sir.
Is there any public comment on this particular item?
I apologize, sir.
Oh, it's fine. Made me do my job.
You asked, so here I am, Tim Hoteling. Just a little footnote to this proposal. What Commissioner Harvey said is real mild compared to the concern that I have, whatever. It provides you all authority. My concern was it's the mechanism to allow you to tax under the term of fees. However, we're facing a huge problem here with fire service and emergency service. And that's like gonna be a really big deal, and you guys are gonna have to talk about it sooner or later, and as near as I can tell, this is the only mechanism available, so therefore, carry on. Question?
I just like to make a comment if I can. Mr. Hoteling. Mr. Hoteling. Sir. So, Mr. DiNovo, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't have to do this every year, do we? Do what you said before?
Yeah, I wanted to give you a little bit of explanation of this. This particular resolution is adopted every year, has been adopted every year. The language has been changed to make clear
Big time.
what this process is all about, okay? And it really is statutory, okay? We're talking about, first of all, just the general authority of the Board of County Commissioners pursuant to 125.01 with regard to municipal service benefit units and the imposition of assessments. And then you go to Chapter 197 that deals with both the adoption of the uniform method as the way to collect assessments, which is under subsection 3 of 197-3632, okay? And then under subsection 4 is the actual adoption of the role and the imposition of the assessments. What we are talking about here is 3. And under state statute, you only have to do it the first time. Now, you've been doing it for 20 years, and there's nothing, there's nothing wrong with doing it, okay? And as a matter of fact, you were authorized to do it by your own ordinance. Your ordinance basically, 38-100, affords you the opportunity to go ahead and adopt this every year if you so choose. So that's why it was explained in the resolution so the public would understand what this process is all about. But this is simply using the uniform method to collect assessments that you've imposed or you may impose in the future. But if you do choose to oppose them in the future, then you're going to have the public hearing process under 4 that will address that particular issue. This is just once and forever, if you so choose, using the uniform method to do so. So procedurally, that's all this is about.
Last year, there was a lot of heartburn, and when you said we didn't have to adopt this every year, what goes through our mind is it's almost seems like we put the public through this every year for no reason. We have the authority statutorily, and we're really just confusing people, it seems like yearly, because it looks like we're trying to impose a new tax or fee, and we're not.
Yeah, that was the purpose of changing the language to make it clear what this process is all about. It is simply to utilize the uniform method as a means of collecting the assessments.
Mr. Goddard?
Yeah, I understand that we don't have to do this. I personally like us doing this. I like it coming out every year. So every year we look at it, they look at it. I personally think it's a good idea. It may be redundant, but I think we need to continue this.
Okay, thank you. What is the pleasure of the commission? Oh, sorry,
Thank you,
Commissioner
Mr.
Harvey.
Chairman. Commissioner Goddard, I agree with you. I think it is, even though we don't have to, I think it's a wonderful idea. that we explain to the public what we're doing and what we can do every year. And there will be no sleight of hand. We will be coming before the public at any time when we need to do something. So I appreciate those comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pleasure of the board is to approve.
I have a comment.
Commissioner Pickens, sorry.
Twice now that I've.
I agree with both Commissioner Goddard and Commissioner Harvey. I think we need to do this every year and explain that we're not assessing any new fees, but this is a way to collect it if we would. So I think if we just leave it alone and not bring this to the attention of the public and to the board each year, that people might question if we do put one in place. Well, we didn't know that you could do that. So I agree with it. We should have it approved every year.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Under discussion?
Yes, sir.
Just to make it clear, I'm not trying to hide anything from the public, but when this language comes out, it seems to be confusing the public. I get several phone calls last year. I got 4 or 5 this year. I don't think that we need to tell the public that we have the authority to impose fees, taxes, whatever, under 125. It's in the Florida statute. We also cannot go out there and impose anything like that without having public hearings. So it just, if we could come out with some language, and I asked for this last year, and clean this up a little bit more and say, we're not doing anything new here. This is an adoption of a resolution that's continuing for the past 20 blah, blah, blah years, and therefore, here we are again letting you know that for the next 364 days, we can come out and impose these fees or taxes and do it that way. But just try to alleviate the heartburn of the public, because the way this reads, it sounds inflammatory. It can be taken. And the first time I read it, I thought the same thing, that we are going to come up with some new fee.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it gives us the opportunity to field those questions, and I look forward to those questions, frankly, because it is an education process as we go down. And I didn't like the language when I first got here. I'm glad the language is being fixed, but I enjoy those conversations when our constituents call and say, are you imposing new fees? No, we're not. And I look forward to that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it, motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to our public hearing on procurement, repealing the ordinance and approving the ordinance that we'd already approved to move on in workshop. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do commissioners have any comments at this time?
I do.
Okay.
Why can't we get this in its final form to review? I've had 6 people that have looked at this and said the same thing. Why are we getting it still chopped up? Why can't we get it in
Well,
its?
personally, I'd like to know what changes were made when I reviewed it instead of what the final form was. If somebody can't understand that, then I guess they could, probably all you'd have to do is call up General Services Director and ask her to give you a final form without the notes on it. I actually requested they be left in there because I like to know what changes have been made from the old one to the new one.
I'd like to do a side-by-side, but not like this.
Okay, well,
and
all you'd have had to do is place a phone call to your General Services Director and ask her for whatever version you
I'm not
wanted.
allowed to speak to staff.
That's not true.
Are we approving this?
That's not true.
Are we approving this?
We're approving the final form, correct?
And this is not the final form,
It
is it?
is, Jeff,
Okay.
with the notes of the changes made, so it'll be the final form without the change.
I won't get to see what we're voting on in its final form. I get this one with all the notations and
Well, I'm
the red
sorry
line
that
and
you
blue
don't have
line.
the ability to read the
I've got
strikeout
the- I've
document.
got the
I'm
ability.
sorry about that.
I'm just simply saying this is not its final form.
Yes, Julie.
It's prepared this way because this is the way we're required to send it to Muni Code in order for the state to record it. We have to highlight for them what has or has not changed, what's been added, what's been removed, in order to send it and have it recorded by the state.
All the formatting?
Yes, sir. That is what I have been advised by legal.
Municode doesn't show any formatting, it just shows a strike-through.
Correct. That's what they will take this document in order to make the final Muni Code document. But if we just send them a blank, then they have to go by it word by word, just like anybody else would. So,
I'm not suggesting you send a blank, but.
No.
This is nothing what, like, Municode looks like.
correct. They will take this and put it into Municode with theirs, and then they will spit out what the new one is going to look like. But this is what I was told was the required format to submit to Municode.
And I like that.
Okay.
Commissioner
Do
Turner?
we have any
Commissioner
public
Turner?
comment on this? We've already approved this so far in the workshop, so, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have no comments towards the item on the agenda, but I am going to request that at the end of our meeting today, you give me a few minutes to address some concerns that's been brought here today on multiple occasions.
Okay. Gonna do it during comment?
Wherever you think is appropriate, sir, but it needs to be said.
Okay, we'll do it during comment if you don't mind. Okay, the chair will entertain a motion. Well, I gotta need to open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment on procurement? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
I move approval, Mr. Chairman, of ordinance 2018-20, or repealing 2018-20 and replacing it with this new ordinance.
Okay.
I'll
Have a
second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Okay. Before we move on to our 9:45 public hearing on the waste code, I'm gonna take a 4-minute recess. 4 minutes, 12 seconds. The final motion that we made was by our new council retained today was inaccurate and needed to be restated. And so I'm going to ask Commissioner Harvey to restate his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion to pass ordinance by the Board of County Commissioners of Putnam County, Florida, amending ordinance 2018-20, Chapter 2, Article 4, Division 2, Procurement of the Putnam County Code and providing for an effective date.
Do I hear a second? I'll second. Okay. Does that suit you, Rich? Yes. Thank you. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Okay. Our next public hearing is on the solid waste ordinance. This were the changes that we discussed at the last workshop, giving the Solid Waste Advisory Committee the opportunity to make a decision on whether or not the solid waste application is or is not valid. And the only question I have before we get started is, did we add the language in there, the last line from the property appraiser that said that if they make an application, that someone from the building department needed to go out there and look to see if that use was or was not in effect, or are we gonna do that? That was brought in after the last workshop. They sent us that information and requested that change.
No, sir, it was not drafted and put in there due to the fact that we did not have a chance to meet with the commissioners after the email came in to have that language discussed. So we can always amend it if we need to in the future.
I think that we need to give that serious thought, because it's not in the purview of the property appraiser to decide the building use on a piece of property, just the value of the property. So I think that probably needs to be added in there, in my opinion, that the building department, and I think we need to, I don't know if we need to do it on a separate motion or a separate, to add a fee, to connect a fee to it. In other words, if they do a solid waste application and we have to send the building department out there to make a determination if or it is not, or if it is or is not being used, that they have to pay a $40 fee, just like you would to go get pull a permit for a demo is $50. I mean, so, you know, they've got to go out there and visit the property. So I think that needs to be open for discussion to what the commission wants to do. Yes, Commissioner Harvey.
Well, Commissioner Turner, first I want to say thank you for your hard work on this and, you know, and trying to give the citizens an avenue to really file a petition more than just yay or nay. and give the people the ability to communicate. I like the idea of adding the building department in there. We have vetted this extensively, knowing that, if somebody could be asking for relief and getting themselves in trouble based on what they have located on their property, and they're going to have to make that decision on their own. I can't make that for them. So I think it would be in our purview to do that, to get the building department involved in that situation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
As this is a public hearing, does anyone here like to have public comment on this ordinance? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the change to the proposed ordinance for solid waste adjustment as proposed.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll
A little clarification on the motion, as the conversation as it, I didn't understand.
Make the whole thing read out.
I didn't understand the motion completely.
To adopt the ordinance that's amending 34-1, Article 1, 34-32B, subsection 6B, 3441A, and 3442B and C of Article 2 of Chapter 34 of the Putnam County Code relating to solid waste.
Is that specific enough for you, Commissioner?
In other words, what you have on page 217 and 18.
Well, I was fine with that. I just didn't know if your motion included what the chairman had been discussing about the building department
No,
involved in that.
Just the ordinance. I thought that the building department would come at a later date.
Okay.
Are we modifying this? Would you like to add that as an amendment?
I don't know how I would state it.
Right.
That's the problem.
Well, does anybody have a copy of the email where it had the short, it was like a half a sentence long that said what the property appraiser requested?
Ms. Parsons is looking at it for you now, sir.
The petitioner shall schedule an inspection by the county building department prior to the hearing.
So that means that they would have to get the building department to determine before they came to the hearing if it was or was not a residential use,
Could we,
correct? Y'all want to see it printed?
no, I'm good with that, but it doesn't address the fees. that you were-
No, that's what I said. It didn't address the fee. In the short email that came with it, they actually recommended we charge for that.
Mr. Chairman, if, in all due respect, if it's the will of the commission this morning, it won't change what it is we're trying to accomplish for Thursday's meetings for the Solid Waste Committee. So if it would be the direction and the will of the commission, we'll go back and look at that, because when we start talking about fees, we may have to amend more than one ordinance. So I'd like to take the opportunity to draft it up and bring it back to
Just move it
you.
forward in its current
current
form.
state. Yes,
Is
sir.
that okay with you, Commissioner
I'll
Rawls?
withdraw my motion.
Is that okay with you? Who was the second? Larry, you were the second?
was not.
Nobody was? Okay.
I'll withdraw my second.
No, sir, we want you to just say the motion's okay with you.
Okay.
Good deal. Or your second's okay. Thank you, Commissioner.
So a point of clarification, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
The building department, if we pass it as proposed right now, as motioned and second, the building department will not be involved in it until a future date when we amend this again.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Sarah, did I call for a public comment on this ordinance yet? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you, Sarah, for keeping me straight. Our next public hearing is time certain at 10 o'clock, so we're past that, and it's the zoning map amendment for Magnolia Dunes PUD. Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chairman and Commission, Mike Brown, Putnam County Planning Development Services. This hearing is a public hearing for PUD 19002. It's an amendment to the existing Magnolia Dunes planned unit development. I'm running into a locked up computer. There we go. The applicant is Mr. Charles Skeet Alford. And just to give you what the request is today and a little background, Magnolia Dunes PUD was originally approved by the Board of County Commissioners of Putnam County in 2008. Since that time period, there have been numerous changes and amendments that have been adopted by the Board of County Commissioners for this PUD. This latest request and what is before you today is a request to allow overflow parking on a parcel adjacent to the eastern boundary of the PUD during the designated events that are allowed within the PUD. The applicant has also requested some clarification for the utilization of motorcycles along with the ATV, UTV use as allowed in the PUD. And I'll go into both of those a little more depth in a few minutes. This is a map of the future land use of the PUD in the surrounding area, and you will see the location of the area requested for the overflow parking to the southeast of the approved PUD. This is a map of the zoning. Surrounding zoning is all agriculture. And here's an aerial that I recognize is a little difficult to see, but showing the PUD and surrounding areas. In all rezonings and PUD planned unit developments and changes to those, we looked at comp plan consistency. As designated in the future land use element, rural recreational uses are allowed in agriculture to future land use. Agriculture to future land use is the land use covering this property. Further in the comp plan, it defines rural recreational uses to, among other things, to include mud bogging facilities. The two proposed changes in this request. The applicant desires to allow overflow parking on the parcel, and I've identified the number, one identified in blue on the map that you saw earlier. This is property owned by the applicant and again, is adjacent to the existing PUD. The area has been utilized for silviculture and rangeland. And then also the applicant has asked for a clarification that motorcycles are allowed within the definition of the ATV, UTV. That has been an interpretation that staff has made in the past. There has been some question from people outside as to that interpretation. So the applicant has requested in this amendment to clarify that. So that is before you today. Here is the area of the close-up of the overflow parking. And in analyzing the proposed changes, staff finds that the proposed amendment would not necessarily increase utilization of the Magnolia Dunes PUD. The applicant is here and can respond a little more in detail, but in general, the reason for the request is the size of the trailers and vehicles that are now coming to the site are larger than they were in the past. And they are starting to cause some crowding problems in the existing camping area. So he has requested to allow parking of those trailers and vehicles in this other areas to relieve some of that overcrowding in the camping area. It also, in discussions with the applicant, he had chosen this area because it is further away from the western end where there are some existing residential uses that have voiced some concerns and complaints with the project in the past. So, but the applicant can go into a little more detail on that, I believe, if needed. Also, there would be no camping allowed in the overflow parking area would just be for parking. And as I indicated previously, that property has been utilized for rangeland and silviculture. There is an isolated wetlands in that parcel. As a condition, a recommended condition to the agreement, there would be no parking allowed within 25 feet of that wetland area. So that wetland, isolated wetland in that overflow parking area would be protected. And again, in the, as it relates to the request for clarification, I've touched on that. It has been the interpretation of planning staff all along that motorcycle use was included in that ATV, UTV designation. The primary use or the utilization of the motorcycles are primarily associated with the GNCC events. As a condition of the PUD agreement as proposed and coming out of the Planning Commission, the recommendation or a condition is recommended to include that no motorcycle engaged racing shall be anywhere closer or maintain a minimum distance of 325 feet from any adjacent property line in which residential structure is located. Staff's recommendation is that we find that the proposed changes to the Magnolia Dunes PUD are consistent with the future land use designation and goals, objectives, and policies of the adopted comp plan. The proposed changes are compatible with the adjacent uses. At its November 13th, 2019 meeting, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended adoption of the proposed amendment to the Magnolia Dunes PUD, and staff recommends approval of the request to amend the Magnolia Dunes PUD to allow overflow parking on parcel 151125000002000020, and to clarify that motorcycles are allowed as a use within the Magnolia Dunes PUD. Is there any questions of staff at this point?
Any questions, Commissioners? Mr. Harvey?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Brown, I have some questions. You alluded to the fact that this eastern additional property would not enlarge the event, basically is your word. And no camping would be allowed in those eastern areas because of the larger trailers. But I've noticed, and believe me, it's a big financial thing for our area out in West Putnam. I've noticed that some of these trucks are coming in, these flatbeds with campers strapped to them, and there are RTVs and ATVs behind them. It's kind of, they kind of put everything on one. I don't know how we could, and it's long. I mean, these trailers, these gooseneck trailers are very long. How would you tell that guy that has a, whatever foot long that is, I never measured them, but I'm sure they got to be 50, 60 feet long, that you can't stay in the camper that you've just put on the flatbed? I mean, I think that's what he's there for. And I say that because I saw that. I saw it going through town one day, and I thought, wow, that's kind of ingenious. The guy put everything on one trailer and brought it down. So,
Well, one of the issues that we have is that there's a maximum number of campsites for the project, and those are identified within the existing PUD boundaries. It would require an expansion of the number of campsites if we were to allow camping over into that area, because there would be no way for staff to monitor who might be sleeping over there and might not be sleeping over there. I mean, that's the dilemma we would be in. I mean, the PUD allows, I believe, 250 campsites, and those are identified within the boundaries of the existing PUD. And without an amendment to allow additional camping, I don't know how the county would be able to make sure that 250 is not exceeded.
Understand. The other thing I want to talk to you about, last time this PUD came before the board, I thought we addressed that additional parking at that point with that eastern driveway coming in off of 310.
But it didn't allow parking outside of the boundaries of.
Okay. So we did, so we relieved the congestion on 310 by giving an eastern inlet, but we did not increase the parking at that time.
Right.
Okay. That's my questions for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rawls?
Under section 20 where it says no camping, who would be responsible for enforcing that?
It's first, the applicant is always that's the first area of responsibility. And then it would fall on county code enforcement or county planning to if there's a question, to go out there and confirm that there's camping or not out there.
Okay. And I'm sure that we're going to hear this when the public gets up to speak. So if there is an instance where somebody is out there camping on the weekend, who would they report to?
But again, the first call needs to be to code enforcement.
Okay.
I mean, that's the only recourse the county has.
Okay.
Okay. Is the applicant present? Would like to speak? You don't have to, but I got to give you the offer.
Name is Charles Alford, 275 Round Lake Road, Palatka, Florida, 32177. And going back to Commissioner Harvey's question, when we did talk about the eastern entrance before to relieve the traffic on the road, and what we didn't realize that there was some language in the PUD that said, and we just didn't realize it, it said all parking must be within the PUD. And when we did that, I don't think anybody really realized that at the time, and it was language that was, brought forward, and I didn't realize it, and that's why, if you remember, we had all this discussion at that time, and it never really came up, because I don't think anybody there's a lot of boilerplate language in the PUD, and I think that was one of those boilerplate things, and it's one of those things we just didn't realize at the time when we first created it. No one dreamed that we would need extra room. We thought we had plenty, and we've just been more and more successful with what we're doing, and it's just grown, and we just reached that point where it required that, and that's why we're here today to ask just for the extra parking over there, because the vehicles, you've seen them, they're just getting bigger and bigger. Right now, they're getting these motor homes, a 35-foot motor home pulling a 40-foot, he's pulling a 35 or 38-foot trailer, and they just don't maneuver in tight quarters very well. So what we did, we just kind of moved them over there in that area. And a lot of those trailers that you see that have the little camper on them, a lot of those guys don't stay. Some of them are just day people. We get a lot of those on most everything that comes in. I would say 99% of everything that comes in on Saturday is all day people. That's why we really don't open that extra entrance till Saturday morning, and that's the reason why we do that. And let's see, I've got my notes here. Anyway, and on the motorcycle thing, truthfully honest, when we created this, I never dreamed that a motorcycle wasn't an ATV. I mean, when we passed the original PUD, we just assumed that a motorcycle was an ATV. We just don't allow motorcycles and four-wheelers and side-by-sides together. They just don't mix, because four-wheelers are slower and motorcycles are fast, and they spend more time in the air than they do on the ground just about. So we just don't mix them in our riding, and so we never dreamed, even though we knew we did the motorcycle thing, we've done the motorcycle thing from the get-go. We did it actually on the property before we created Hogwaller. They were doing them down at the Robin Plantation. We had done them for years and years, and so it's one of those things that no one never thought that a motorcycle was an ATV. And that was, so we're just asking for clarification because we still don't allow motorcycles and side-by-sides and four-wheelers together because of, they just don't mix well together. They don't play well together. So we do the motorcycle things. We actually do 2 races a year, Florida Trail Riders and GNCC, and that's about the only 2 we do, and have no desire to do any more. So that's why we're just asking for that. I never dreamed that someone would question that a motorcycle wasn't an ATV. And that was the main thing. You're going to hear about trash today and everything like that. And I kind of reckon it, because if you go look at the highway now, it's as clean as it's ever been. Matter of fact, we cleaned it started on Monday, and it took till Tuesday, because we actually cleaned all the way to Highway 19 and all the way to the bridge. Normally, we don't clean all the way to 19, but we did this time, because actually the county had mowed, and I don't want to get anybody's business here, but they didn't pick up the trash before they mowed this time, and it created a huge mess. It made it look like it took 1 piece of trash and made it 10 pieces of trash. So it looked very and we always get the blame no matter what, even though I can tell you this, we picked up Monday and Tuesday, and if you go right down 310 right now and go and look, you'll be surprised at how much trash is already back on the road, and we picked up every single little piece, when we picked up this last time, because it was such a mess. So I dedicated my guys to an extra day of picking. So, and it will surprise you how much is there now. It was kind of sad. So, but I kind of reckon it too, people complain about the trash when we get done with an event, but I'd kind of reckon it too, if you go look at your mother's kitchen after a Thanksgiving meal, and if you judge her housekeeping skills on what the kitchen looks like right after that meal preparation, you're going to think your mother is the lousiest housekeeper in the world. Well, right after an event, yes, I will agree. It is a lot of trash blows out of people's trucks. We have over 350 trash cans now in our property there. So we give people every opportunity to get rid of their trash, but some people still leave stuff in their truck, and what you see on the side of the road is what blows out of the back of their truck, and it's generally for about just a little bit on each side of our entrance. Then it goes down a little bit further, but that's why we generally pick up to the bridge and to what we call the middle of our field. So, I'd ask, the trash situation, we get it picked up, though I'll guarantee you, it's kind of like saying you're going to judge us on 1 day of trash when the rest of the other 30 days of the month is clean, because we picked up. So I don't think that's a fair judgment, even though it is very trashy right after a big event like we had. On our normal events, it's not that bad, and it doesn't take much to pick it up. So that was the main thing, and I'll be glad to answer any other questions. So,
I'll just say, Commissioner Pickens.
Yeah, Mr. Alford, on behalf of the county, thank you for picking up that trash, and I know Mark Fisher back there appreciates it too, because he complained about that a couple of meetings ago. I understand this addition to this PUD would be just used for parking, the overflow parking of larger trucks, trailers that are coming to your facility. What checks and balances or procedures you got in place to make sure nobody is going to camp in there?
we're going to address that. It is a struggle, to be honest with you. We have to catch them when they pull in. And like I say, we don't open it up till Saturday most of the time. On the big event, we did have to open up on Friday some because we had some folks that came in. We had over about 3/4 of the people we had come in Friday were day people because when they fill out a form, they fill out a waiver. So we knew they were day people, but some of them ride late into the night and they don't leave till, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock sometimes. So it's hard to, but you can kind of tell those events. We're going to have to address this issue in the future. It's something we're working on. We're growing, and to be honest with you, we just had the largest event we've ever had, and we did. This is the largest event we've ever had, and we had people from all over. We're getting people from, no joke, we've had people from every country. We're on the internet now on YouTube, and I've had people from Australia, Holland, France. The last two events, we had international travelers that actually come here. They fly into New York and they rent cars, and then they drive all over the United States doing their vacation. And Hogwaller is one of the places that they stop. They come here on purpose from all over the world now. But we get people from Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, constantly. I mean, we probably have a lot of people from all over the Southeast now. And be honest with you, it's how we grow in the future is an issue for us, and we're trying to work on. We're probably going to be open more, trying to spread it out further. Instead of doing the twice a weekend thing, we're going to be open every day, which we can do now, but logistically we haven't been able to work. We just haven't worked it out. Trying to get some of these folks to come, and they can only ride till 8 o'clock at night. There's just 2 weekends a month that they can ride the 24 hours, and that's a big draw. I'll be honest with you, that's a draw for a lot of the folks that come. So, but we have a lot of folks that don't want to come on the big weekends because of the crowd. So they come only on the smaller weekends, and on those smaller weekends, it's not an issue. So it is an issue that we're working on it and trying to keep those folks. And we did park there, and I think you're going to hear up here where we violated the PUD this last weekend. We did use the field. And the reason why we use the field, because to solve the issue, my alternative is to go west and clear a bunch of property. The last thing I want to do is clear a bunch of property, is clear the buffer that we have between us and the residential area. I can go that way, and I can legally do it and don't have to ask any permission or anything. But once I clear it, it's done. It takes years and years for trees to grow back. So I'd rather, be honest with you, I violated the PUD this Hogwaller weekend. I'm going to admit it right here. But the alternative, I just tried to use some common sense where we didn't go and clear a bunch of property until I know how this was going to be resolved. I would have loved for this to come up before this Thanksgiving weekend, but it didn't. The timing, the way things worked, it just timed out bad. But my alternative is, if I need more room, if I can't get this eastern stuff, my alternative is to go west. And then that's just going to move everything closer to the residential people that I really don't want to affect. Believe it or not, we're trying to keep things out. We're going to actually probably install some quiet stuff on our own. We created a camping area on that end that's family only, that we dead-ended it. They don't ride through it, so it shuts down at 10 o'clock at night, that family camping area. So we're doing that. We're implementing that. We're trying to do things to make it quieter on that western side, but there's some things, and we're going to look at some decibel limits on some of the machines. We've already talked about how to do that, how to enforce it, how we're going to do it. We're working on the logistics of trying to put some decibel. Believe me, there's some of those machines are obnoxious. We don't like them. I've asked about 4 or 5 of them, leave, don't bring that machine back. I do ask that, but there's some that show up every time. So we're going to limit some if they go over a decibel meter. I have a decibel meter that I've checked the decibels at certain areas on certain property lines, and we're trying to limit those. And so if we hear a machine that's over a certain decibel amount, we're going to ask them. We ask them to leave now. I've told several of them, don't bring that machine back until you either put a muffler on it or just don't bring it back. So we are trying to do some things, but it's still the nature of the beast.
Did that short answer give you the information you needed, Commissioner Pickens?
I wasn't sure he was going to answer it, but he did answer it. Thank you.
I did. I eventually got around to it.
Yeah, you got around to it. Thank you.
Mr. Rawls, you got your button pushed?
Okay, so, is there any chance that you could do sound attenuation berms around?
We did a big berm on the west now. It's about 12 foot high.
Okay.
We dug a big trench and trying to deflect the sound up.
Right.
It's about as high as you can get one, and Plus, I'm trying to leave as much tree vegetation that way as I can, you know what I'm saying, to cut down the sound also. I'm not gonna sit here and sugarcoat. It does get, you can hear it. On a quiet night in Florida, you can sit here, I mean, as a kid, I used to hear the racetrack in Satsuma.
Yeah.
In
I used to hear
Pinal, you could hear it. It's just the nature of where we live. It's not a big city. In a big city, you can't hear that far. And when you live out, you hear a long way. You can hear the cars going across the bridge up there at Camp Branch on 19. I can hear them badoop, 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 badoop when I'm on a night. So you hear a lot of vehicles on the highway out there. So
But the east side seems to be your area of concern.
the east side, there's no neighbors. The closest neighbor is the river.
Okay.
There's nobody east of me, basically. Everybody,
What
the
about
only
to the
people are on the
north?
west.
Is there any berming to the north, or would that?
There's nobody, you'd have to
Nothing
go
to
to
the-
Highway 20. It goes through the Miller track.
Okay.
There's nobody north of me.
Okay.
There's nobody south of me except for one residence. That's Rodney Sheffield's place there. And he's the only one south of me. Other than that, the only place, I mean, if you're looking for a place to do something like this, it's hard to locate it. I challenge you to locate something in an area. We tried to pick an area as isolated as we could, and unfortunately, it is going to affect some folks. I can't
You
help
speak
it.
about the big events. I just wonder if it wouldn't be helpful, even though he's on private property, since there is the impact on the community to require an event permit, and then us put law enforcement and other folks out there like we would if they were having something downtown at Palatka or at the fairgrounds or whatever. Maybe that might be a solution to some of the enforcement.
Well, maybe we should make you get an additional permit before you go open your office up on tomorrow morning and go to work.
I'm gonna open my office tomorrow? No, and
Right.
you're saying that you're struggling with enforcing some of the conditions of the PUD.
We do have off-duty deputies there. We use
Okay.
off-duty deputies. We use real off-duty deputies, and they get the calls when some people complain, they get the calls, and I don't know
That's
exactly
been
what they do.
a lot
But
of the
it's funny you
concerns that
should
I've
say
had
that,
are
because I'm
about
actually
enforcement.
thinking of going to, I haven't talked to Mike about this yet. I was gonna try to get to him after all this and see, on certain big events, we may need something
Right.
else, because there's only like 2 big events. We do it Thanksgiving and what they call the Super Bowl. The rest of the events, we can handle. It's no
That's
big
what I'm
issue.
talking, just what I wrote down.
But I'm trying not to
on big
affect the
events.
counties. The county doesn't spend any money on an event. I pay the county basically to
Right.
do this. So, and I don't want to do anything that would cause the county to spend money. And so,
We'd like to do something to cause you to spend money, though.
yeah, so we,
So the riding hours, one of the complaints that I've heard is they come, even though you have a restricted riding hours, people jump on their machine and go out at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. I know that's probably hard to control, but
we actually put up chains on the entrances, and we chain them all. We actually put signs up and chains on the entrances. But sometimes somebody gets through, but what we're gonna have to start doing, and what we've already talked about it among our folks, is we're gonna have to just leave somebody there all night, because what happens, we get them all out of the area, and somebody comes up there, and somebody comes in, and we tell everybody when they come in, hey, riding shuts down at 8 o'clock tonight, but people get excited, they get there, and they lose track of time, and believe me, I was out there last event till about 10 o'clock, trying and running them all out, and I got them all out after, but I have to find them. It's 1,100, it's 1,000 acres, you just don't, and you think you got them all, and you listen, and you hear one more, but it's not like there's a lot of them. They're very scattered, and so we're just gonna actually put somebody on the gate on all the entrances, and we've already talked about this in our people, because we were very frustrated. Last thing I want to do is be out there at 10 o'clock at night trying to run people out of the area. So, believe me, that's the last thing I wanted to do that night. I wanted to go home, and I couldn't, so.
And
It was an issue.
Are you committing to keep the roadsides cleaned up?
Yes,
Is that
we
what I'm
clean
hearing?
up
Okay.
after every event, and I heard on Facebook somehow we didn't clean up the event before that, before the Thanksgiving, we did clean up. It was just 3 weeks, we had 3 weeks off before that event, And what happened, it grew up, and then the county came along and mowed, and we did pick up. It's just, when the grass was just growing higher and higher, and when they come mowed, it just made it look like a bomb went off. So that was our problem.
I can picture that.
But we did pick up. We do pick up after every event. Usually it's Monday or Tuesday. Sometimes it's Wednesday. It depends. If it's not very bad, we'll wait till Wednesday. We're trying to get everything. Wind blows, it's an issue.
And I'm gonna try to move this along if everybody's kind of got what they need for now and open it up to public comment. Thank you, Mr. Alford. First, I'm gonna ask Joe Locke to come forward.
Good morning, I'm Joe Locke. I live at 109 Rodman Lane, Palatka, Florida. And as Mr. Alford said, and we all know, this PUD evolved from a little 24 times a year, or actually it was, I guess, 24 times a year mud bog. And that's the way this started. You know, everybody heard about military mission creep. This has been venue creep out here. This venue has kept on expanding. And now the owner wants to expand it into a racing venue. Now, he keeps on saying he wants to ride motorcycles. But let's be clear, it's racing. It's going to be a racing venue for motorcycles. The Putnam County Land Use Development Code specifies at least 500 foot from the nearest residential area for racing venues. You know, and this application should actually be looked like a new application of this size. We shouldn't look at this, or I asked you all not to just look at this little tiny piece he's asking for now, but let's look at the whole situation we're into. The PUD should be compatible to surrounding residents. 1,000 ATV, UTVs, motorcycles, whatever, riding 75 foot from a property line. None of you would want it in your backyard. It's not compatible. I don't think there's no argument to it. PUD planning requires applicant to provide data and evidence supporting compatibility. This data has never been produced. It's never happened. It's all just, well, we're doing this, we're doing that. Yes, we're going to try to do that. A PUD is supposed to be under the sole control of the applicant, yet there's more than 80 parcels of land inside that fenced PUD that is not owned by the owner. So what's he doing to protect these people's property? What happens if somebody gets hurt on somebody else's property? Are they liable? Are they going to come back to the county? I request that a workshop be held, that this be shelved, and we have a workshop. And we gather input from other people. All along this has just been, well, we're doing this, we're doing that. Let's get some input from the Water Management District. Section 4 of the PUD states that the applicant shall have a letter stating no regulatory actions before the commencement of activities. St. John's Water Management, I'm sure you all seen the letter, has sent a letter addressing encroachment on wetlands and turbidity issues on this site. These issues have not been resolved. So he's not really supposed to have, if this passes, he shouldn't have no more activities until he resolves everything with the water management. Let's talk to the DOT, and we're just talking about the heavy, big equipment. You got a bridge down there. Deep Creek Bridge is impacted. So what effect is this going to have on Deep Creek Bridge by increasing? It don't matter what you say. You got more parking. You're going to have more people. That's going to be more traffic, more heavy traffic on the bridge. How's that going to impact it? I think we need to hear from DOT. Let's talk to the off-duty law enforcement that's out there. Has a county, or have any of you all ever spoke to the law off-duty? I've never have. I'd like to hear what they say concerning what could be done to improve this situation. Let's work together on this. What about the EMTs? Has anybody talked to the emergency people? We have a crisis, the way I understand it, in Putnam County on EMTs and stuff. Okay, the owner's supposed to have an ambulance or fire on site at all times. Maybe it might be beneficial to the county to require him to hire private ambulance service or something of that nature. That way, when I'm down there having a heart attack, the ambulance can come and see me. Let's have the owner submit a noise assessment, an environmental impact study. How about a dust control plan? When it's dry out there and you drive by, it looks like the Sahara Desert. And let's invite some concerned citizens to have a word in this. Growth in the county should be advantageous to all. Some in the area, including myself, I got parcels of land out there I would like to develop. Right now, I feel like I'm negative impacted. Who's going to want to buy out there with the noise and confusion we have out there twice a month? I'm not opposed to growth or development. However, it should be smart growth and not negatively impact others' land use. When we approach the county with our concerns about things going on, like the parking and the motorcycle racing, we're told that the county is working with the owners. I think it's time for the county to work with some of the property owners that live nearby. 75 foot from your back door, thousands of ATVs. Thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to go over.
Yes, sir. The next person would be,
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
can we get through public comment? We've got another meeting at 12 o'clock. Can we get through public comment?
I got a question I'd like to ask you.
Okay, go right.
You're stating 75 feet from your door, you've got
No,
a
sir.
trail?
And it's not mine, it's other property owners. We talk to everybody. It's 75 foot from their property line. If they have a
Okay, no,
residential.
You just said from the door.
No, sir, I'm sorry if I did, I misspoke. It's
Okay, I'm good.
75 foot.
Okay, yeah.
I get excited.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
The next I'm gonna call is Miss Cindy Locke.
I'm Cindy Locke. I live on County Road 310 at 109 Rodman Lane. Oh, wait just a second here, my phone flipped. This is not a good thing. There we go. Okay, boy, there's a lot that's been said, and there's a lot to say. And there's other residents here that live out there where we are, and they're not going to get up and speak, so I hope you let me run over a bit. I'm here to discuss safety, health, and our environment concerning this PUD. The county approved a PUD to operate an unregulated activity to ride dangerous vehicles on private property, with the lack of resources to enforce the ordinance. Now, alcohol is allowed on the entire 956 acres where they're riding. Minors are in attendance without parental supervision during the 24-hour, 4-day events. The county allowed 24-hour riding with 75-foot setbacks from residents to operate loud vehicles, keeping residents from sleeping, along with the noise of loud 24-hour traffic. The county approved, basically, a large-scale motorsports park to operate on agricultural, silvicultural wetland with the allowed 24-hour riding and mud bogging on dangerous vehicles that dredge and impact the land. The owners have violated this PUD since 2000, using motorcycles to race and off-site park and camp for over 2 years. The owners often tout, and they do, on their Facebook page, that they will turn no one away. That would mean any type vehicle, increasing what already is a dangerous event, exceeding the capacity of this PUD, which is around 5,800 people. Along with the trash, litter, the site uses water from our aquifer to make mud and has rinse stations to wash off thousands of vehicles' contaminants. The 1,100-acre motorsports park is part of the watershed to Rodman Reservoir. Rodman's ecosystem is County Road 310's ecosystem. The PUD backs up to conservation land and greenways and trails. This activity does not meet the definition for eco or agriculture tourism. In fact, the activity and the 24-hour events leave a large carbon footprint in our county. The owners have compliance issues that are unresolved with St. Johns River Water Management since January of this year. They have Wetland Area 1 was originally permitted as trail riding. The current use extends beyond the intent and is now considered wetland impacts. South end at the old cattle cross has turbid discharge. North of the project RPM alley are wetland impacts. North side in the overflow parking area falls outside the extent of the current permit boundaries, but he's been using it. The site violates the stormwater wastewater plan for material off-site at the entrance of this PUD. If the board votes yes on this amendment, you are expanding a PUD for profit and revenue at the cost of our environment and health and safety. Residents' growth and development surrounding this PUD should have been considered. Citizens' participation and oversight from state, federal, and local agencies was paramount in the beginning of planning of this PUD. This PUD is not compatible, and it continues to be a nuisance to the residents and the environment. Could the county comply today with Section 24 in this PUD until final permits from St. Johns River Water Management, as this letter that I have here is a regulatory action? Or comply with Section 28? Or table the vote, consult in a workshop with federal and state local agencies and input from residents? Why approve additional off-site parking and use of motorcycles to motocross, increasing the riding and noise when the current PUD's condition and uses are impacting wetlands? Let's grow Putnam responsible. And I have one thing to say here. The berm that he's talking about, he placed that berm right next to his fence line. He dug up a road that could have served as a fire line for those residents on the west side, and that berm should have been at the 75-foot setback. But that's not the way it is out there. And back in that time when that berm was being discussed, we were asking for a fire line. Those vehicles ride out there without spark arresters. There's thousands of people out there, children. They're probably smoking cigarettes and gosh knows whatever else. And there should be a fire line out that way. There's, on that west side. And as far as the off-site parking at the other end, in the meeting that was discussed, the county attorney said that property that he's asking to allow has to be rezoned to commercial. And that driveway has to be brought up to county standards for a commercial driveway. So to allow it means you're going to put it in a PUD, but the PUD has to be commercial, but you're not letting this property that he wants to off-site on be commercial. So he should have to rezone that to commercial.
You about to get there, Miss Law?
Yeah. Sorry. There's a lot to say here. There's a lot going on.
Commissioner Rawls.
And
I got so you're saying under 24, is it your assertion that DEP or Water Management District has not issued the permits that he needs to be in compliance?
No. I sent Mr. Brown the letter, and the
Commissioner Rawls, we need
situation's
to
not
understand
resolved.
We're not DEP
Right.
or
No,
Water
I
Management. They
I
can go
understand.
No,
and
it
do
says,
their own.
it says right here in the PUD, it says the applicant owner shall secure applicable permits from the Department of Environmental Protection and Water Management District or verification letter of no regulatory action which shall be required prior to commencing the use.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So there we
Like
go.
Like I said, the Water Management District can go and take, and
That's
work on
their
their own
regulatory agency.
regulations.
We're not. That was the question I was going to follow up with was, so.
But he's commencing use, and he has a regulatory action against him from St. Johns River Water
But
Management.
I think that would require Water Management, DEP notifying us that they're out of compliance.
Y'all don't communicate.
I don't disagree with you there
You
at
haven't
all.
brought them to the table in this PUD. There's no workshop, there's no oversight from
Yes, sir.
your aspect. You're
Hang
not
on,
getting
Mr.
data or
Alford.
evidence from them.
I'll give you another chance to speak.
Under 28, so you're saying that the county laws, codes, and ordinances are not being adhered to?
If the applicant violates conditions of this PUD ordinance, the Board of County Commissioners may, in accordance with due process, schedule the property for public hearing for revocation of this PUD. He is violating this PUD. He admitted he's violating this PUD. He's been violating this PUD since 2008. How many amendments, Mr. Brown?
I believe 6 or 7.
Well, I think that he started a business, and just like any other business that starts out, you can't have the foresight to know
No.
what kind of growing pains you're going to have.
But you don't leave out, you can't leave us out. You're leaving the citizens who are
We're
affected
gonna try
out.
not to have a debate here. We understand you're against it. We get it. Do you mind if I move on to the next public?
I'm not against growth. I'm not against that.
I
I'm for
understand, Ms.
responsible
Locke, I truly
growth.
do. Thank you very much. Casey Sheffield.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name's Casey Sheffield. I live at 391 County Road 310. Parents live next door, 395 County Road 310. I think I can boil this down in a nutshell. For me, is the noise ordinance. And I can pretty much speak for anybody on 310. Hogwaller has set ride times from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Those are blown completely out of the water. I don't have any, my family and all of us have been friends for many, many years. No bad complaints about them. But we've got to have something stipulating cutoff times. Commissioner Harvey, I understand what you're saying about the equipment, the flatbed trailers, toy haulers. They start, on the big weekends, they start coming in Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I've got an open invitation for anybody sitting in this room to come sit in my front yard and witness what I'm telling you. I have nothing to hide. Thanksgiving weekend, Wednesday and Thursday, ride times were from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. That didn't happen. My question to y'all is, who stops this? Who stops the ride times? I've got in contact with all major ATV parks from Central Florida to Central Georgia. I've got everything right here. Everything they've got together is they all have quiet times. And I actually called for the bigger ones, and they're as big as Hogwaller, if not bigger. And they told me on the phone they've got cutoff times, and they do stand behind their cutoff times because they don't want the same problems we've got here. My question is, there's no sleeping on 310 on these big events. None. I mean, they're riding 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. My question is, where can we resolve this issue? Commissioner Rawls, you brought up, who do we put in contact? I mean, y'all saying getting code enforcements, but I don't, nobody for me to call at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So my neighbors this past weekend, they had some kind of festival or reunion, Friday night, Saturday night, this past weekend. My neighbors were standing on their porch at 1 o'clock in the morning just sitting there shaking their head because they're playing the PA system. You can't hear yourself think. So where do we go from here? I'm all for growth. I'm glad they got a park for the kids in this area. It brings a lot of money into this county. But they've got to work with us on a cutoff time to where people can, if it's not from midnight to 7 o'clock, I'll be fine with that. People work for a living. I don't want to lay in bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and sound like I got a party coming through my bedroom window. All these new ATVs are equipped with speakers, amplifiers. The east side of Hogwaller is a long drag strip, and they all congregate right there across from our gate, party, you know, and I'm fine with that. But if it's a cutoff time, there's got to be a cutoff time. Where does it stop? This is the first time I have been down there and confronted anybody on this panel about any of this. Now they're wanting to rezone across from my house for overflow parking. Commissioner Harvey's got a good point. Does the overflow parking empty out every day, refills back up the next morning, or do they allow them to stay overnight? So I'm here asking for answers. What can we do to resolve this? So where do we go from here?
Mr. Sheffield, if I was in your position, I would be looking at the county attorney and asking him if the county has any responsibility, the county commission has any responsibility to deal with this, or if we cannot deal with that portion of the enforcement. Because that's where I'm confused as a commissioner. I'm being told that we really don't have a dog in this fight. And I really don't know where I stand, to be honest with you, as a commissioner.
Well, I mean, to the point now, I mean, my wife and I want to build our dream home next summer, but if we can't get this resolved, what's the use of me building our dream home? And it's to the point now where who's going to come buy our property and they're having the same issues I'm having. You know, I'm kind of stuck in left field here. Where do we go? My question is, who do we contact?
We got to get to a compromise.
Yes, sir. I mean, like I said, I'm all for them doing what they're doing. I'm glad they're doing it. People need a place to go blow off steam. But we've got to come to a mutual agreement to where Mr. Alford just said, you know, they try to keep the noise down, but if they got a cutoff time, if they got off-duty deputies from the sheriff's office, say, hey, go to the camp, chill out 6, 7 hours, pick up at daylight. I'll be fine with that.
Would it help if there was an on-duty sheriff's deputy or somebody with the authority to enforce that there 24 hours during the event? Would that help?
To me, yes, sir, it would. If they had maybe 1 or 2 deputies to patrol the facility, and Mr. Alford, I'm just going to throw this out there, say they cut off the time at midnight. Have those deputies ride the premises, say, hey, it's midnight, shut it down, you can resume riding at 7 a.m. Everybody.
Your neighbors agree at midnight?
Well, I mean, I'm just throwing this out there because of these ATV parks. I've got all the information right here from all these ATV parks. Most of them shut down at 10 p.m. till 7. Some of them stopped at midnight and ran to 7 a.m. quiet time. Then they resumed riding. That's to me, that'd be a mutual point between me and the landowners on the riding. But now it's 24/7.
Hey, I have a question for staff. Mike, today we're here, am I correct or incorrect? Today we're here looking at the application of whether or not we're gonna allow him to park the additional parking. We're not here today it doesn't open up the gates to start redoing the whole PUD or anything like that. That, we don't have that authority today, I don't think, that's not what the application is. The application is, do we allow him the extra parking? And do we agree with staff that a motorcycle and an all-terrain vehicle is the same thing? When I was growing up, everything, that there weren't four-wheelers back then, there was three-wheelers and motorcycles. They were called ATVs or all-terrain vehicles. So I'm with staff. A motorcycle is a motorcycle. It's got three wheels, four wheels, two wheels, whatever. So that part of it, to me, is no issue to talk about whatsoever. The other issue is, do we allow him to park on this other area that they own, so it's on the other side of the property? Do we go there and do it? That's what's at issue today, and we can keep talking about all these other things and muddy it up all we want, but that's what's at issue today. Do we want to allow him to park on his own property on the other end of where the residential people are and grant this, or do we want him to go clear the property on the other side next to the residential and make that where he's gonna park his vehicles? That's basically, because he can do that without asking us, I understand.
I think,
So,
it sounds to me like you have a spirit of cooperation between the landowners. I think it's gonna take you guys getting together with Mr. Alford. He sounds like he's willing to be amenable to making changes and enforcing the provisions. I think, this is one of the situations where, if nothing else, the commission, by allowing this conversation to happen in here, we could put some of this stuff to bed. I don't think we're gonna satisfy everybody, but, it's heartfelt when you talk about your family and the impact you're looking at building a house or not building a house, and, that's pretty tough. And Ms. Locke and her husband, they have a lot of frustration. So, personally, if, I would ask legal staff to take a look at this and see if they're in compliance. As far as whether or not they have unified control over the 80 parcels, that they don't have to have ownership.
Right.
But,
Well, I mean, I know you guys get tired of hearing this come up at these meetings, and I honestly believe if we could resolve the noise part of it,
that's our job.
then this would go away.
Right.
I'm just asking for, 6, 7, 8 hour window to let everybody get some sleep and then pick up the next morning. I'd be fine with that. I'm sure Ms. Locke and them be fine with it as well.
Casey, could I ask
Sir.
that you get with Skeet, y'all see what you can work
Yes, sir.
out? I think he'll do what he can
sir, that's
within,
fine.
do what
That's
he
fine.
can within reason to, I think he will.
That'd be fine. I
Maybe
appreciate it.
maybe bring it to a workshop if y'all need to. We can look at it. But, I think getting to a solution without involving government, that's
No,
what
and I'm all for that. I mean, like I said, I will speak on Skeet's behalf on the trash. They did an awesome job. It did take them two full days, because that's, like you said, that's one of the biggest events I've ever witnessed, and I've been there since '06. So, it was neck deep in trash, and they did a good job on that. But, I will get with him after the meeting.
Casey, I was raised at Rodman, and I understand the fact that even when there wasn't a hog waller there was trash on the side of the road.
Yes, sir, it's bad.
There ain't no hog waller in East Palatka. Go over there and pick a road, and you're gonna find trash on it. So,
Yes, sir.
while it may be worse from hog waller and they're picking it up, that doesn't mean that some of it's coming from people that's not hog waller people.
No, I agree. I see empty corn bags, beer cans, and so forth. They do a good job on Mondays and Tuesdays picking trash up. I will give them that, so.
Okay, thank you, Casey.
Yes, sir.
We can try to move this along a little bit. Is there any other public comment?
Mr. Chairman, I got one I want to read into the
Okay.
record as your.
I think you can just say that we've all seen it, and it's given to Sarah, so it's a piece of the record. Don't you have a piece of this right here? So when I was chairman of the planning commission, that's how we handled written evidence.
He actually specifies.
I know he
would
asked
like
you,
it
but that
read.
doesn't mean you have to do it. If you wish to do it, that's fine, but it's already part of the record.
Okay, I'll read it just.
Okay, that's fine, yes, sir, go right
I
ahead.
received this last night about 7:30, and he called me this morning. And I have spoken to Mr. Alford about this. So he says, I hope this finds you well. I do not anticipate being at the board meeting due to business conflicts. In my absence, I ask that you read this correspondence during the meeting. I just wanted to convey my disappointment in my cousin's behavior and not being considerate to their neighbors, and the blind eye from law enforcement and other county government as to what goes on out there. Had this venue been properly designed, it would have less impact on those who live nearby. I have multiple friends in the area who cannot enjoy a little solitude in their own homes due to the noise of all hours of the night. There are elderly who cannot sleep at night. Sewage is dumped out of the campers and RVs onto public right-of-ways as they leave. These are but a few of the items that I'm frequently asked to relate to my cousin. I allowed my daughters to go there when they were younger. One of them had a knife pulled on her. I was there when it happened. I stopped it. The offender was a minor, and upon informing the deputy of what occurred, the minor was taken into custody, and her mother was called to come pick her up. No charges were filed. The minor was not arrested. That one person would not have financial impact on this venue. Yet similar things have happened, and other people are not held accountable. Deputies are not motivated to enforce the law for fear of losing their extra income. Our sheriff needs to take an unbiased look. Our commission needs to remember good old boy antics will soon be washed away with the growth coming our way. So I ask, at what price does the county sacrifice people's ability to enjoy their own homes? I'm not opposed to people having a venue to enjoy or people making money off their land. What I am opposed to is infringing on the others' people's rights so that someone can profit off of it. We are taught to love our neighbors, and that obviously will not happen with enlargement of the trough and its infrastructure. Wade Alford, Pomona Park.
Okay, thank you for that, reading that. Okay, you're gonna hold it to 3 minutes, Karen? Thank you.
Real short, yeah, I read the agenda and I did read that letter from the Water Management District that they're not in compliance, there's some violations there, and I'm not sure why you would vote to expand an area that will bring in even more impact when there's already issues with the Water Management District.
You understand it's not up to the county commission to go and police the water management.
Right, but it is up to the county to expand so there's more impact. I mean, you know there's already a problem. They're in violation and not in compliance. So why would you, it is up to you to allow more impact and more expansion.
I would like to hear our county attorney chime in on that. I'm confused as to what our responsibility is.
Well, I'm gonna allow the applicant to answer some of the questions concerning water management, because evidently that's where this is going to, even though it's not up to us to police the water management.
I'm just becoming aware that there's an issue, but if what Ms. Locke points out is correct, we may have a responsibility in not moving forward with this. I would like to know where.
Charles
for me-
Alford, 275 Round Lake Road, Palatka, Florida. We have an active water management permit. We had one from the very beginning. We got one. I don't know the number. I didn't bring the number. There is an active water management. Yes, some people called water management, said that we had some things wrong. Water management came out and made some evaluations. We are in the process now of mitigating. They're actually going to get another 100-something acre. I'm having to mitigate for some wetland impact that happened after the original permit. For them to say yes, we have a violation, but it's being issued. We're actually in the middle now of doing the UMAN scores, and if you're familiar with UMAN and all those kind of things, they're doing it's how they determine the mitigation factor. So we've already addressed it. It's just water management moves like slow government, okay? It's very slow, believe me. I am paying a consultant a lot of money to solve this issue, and it's very expensive to do it, and yes, but it's in the process, and water management is very aware. There's nothing that they don't know. They know everything. DEP, we went through, Ms. Locke has called every agency in the world has looked underneath our skirt, from the Corps to the, every agency you can think of has looked under there. DEP has come out, evaluated, and said they go with the water management. They say their jurisdiction. The Corps has come out, the Florida Division of Alcohol, Firearms, or whatever you want to call them, has come out. We got a good report from them. Yes, we did have some things, but they said by far, for the number of people we have, you have one of the cleanest operations. You can go back and ask the officer who was there. We did an after report. He said, Dave's one of the cleanest operations. You know, for the number of people you have very little. So I don't care where you go, you're going to have something. So, but we do have an active water management permit and it is actually in the process of being amended right now. It's just in the process. I can't help it that it's just slow moving.
Thank you, Mr. Alford. Public, you get 3 minutes, but I will allow it, Ms. Locke, just where you won't go around saying that I'm not giving you your due, so. Huh?
I would do that. Mr. Brown and the county attorney, in PUD planning, it says that all the property within the PUD has to be owned by the owner, and it has to be rezoned for commercial use,
Cindy,
correct?
you need to address me.
Excuse me.
We're not gonna have a debate in here between you and staff, so
In
please
the PUD,
address me.
it states, in planning a PUD, it states that all the property within the PUD is rezoned for commercial use. So if he parks off-site, that parking area is not commercial. It still remains agricultural. So how can he have it in the PUD? I don't understand that. The county attorney passed.
As part of the PUD, you can put, commercial uses inside of an agricultural ground as long as it's in a PUD.
When it's rezoned to commercial. This
So a
property,
PUD is a rezoning.
the agricultural off-site property has not been rezoned to commercial for PUD use.
Okay,
Period.
Thank you, Ms. Locke, I understand what you're saying.
Ms. Locke, if I could, I'm familiar with the PUD that involves a shipyard and residential land, all inside of one PUD. So I don't know why you couldn't have commercial and agriculture at the same time as well.
But I thought the PUD planning, when you planned a PUD, it had to be rezoned to commercial.
Is that
And-
correct? No,
No, that's not correct.
So,
The planned unit development is its own zoning.
Right.
That's its own
everything
zoning
inside the
district.
PUD is a special zoning.
So that he can park off-site and use agricultural land, not zone commercial.
According to what I'm seeing, it falls
Is that
within the.
correct? Somebody, the attorney, can he answer the
Yes,
question?
I'll try to clear this up.
Thank you, Joe. I get it, but it's simple here. You can do it. You can make
A plan unit
anything
development.
inside of a PUD.
Right. What we refer to as commercial agriculture in that is usually considered, is called Euclidean zoning. That's your standard, this is commercial, this is residential, this is agricultural, this is industrial. Plan unit developments is a relatively recent phenomenon compared to traditional zoning. It allows a mixture of uses in order to provide certain benefits that come within that unit, okay? But that unit itself is a separate zoning category that can blend traditionally separate uses that were separate uses under Euclidean zoning. So to the extent that this is part of the PUD, okay, and is assigned certain uses within that PUD, the zoning of it as a PUD accommodates those uses, if it's part of the PUD.
But the agricultural land wasn't
Put a timer on
rezoned to
the
be part of the PUD.
You wanted an explanation, didn't you?
The on-site
trying to get the
parking wasn't rezoned to be part of this PUD.
Okay.
All right, you need to address me. If you would like to meet with council after the meeting to ask some of these questions, I'd be more than happy to hook you up, but you better hurry, because tomorrow's his last day.
I know.
Today's his last day. Today's his last day, so
Well, we would like a workshop. We would like to sit down
I understand,
and
I
have
understand, Ms.
input
Locke, I
in
understand,
this.
thank you,
And we'd like to, we'd like that.
I
I mean,
understand.
this has
Thank
just gone
you.
too far.
thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, Chair will entertain a motion or further discussion, whichever the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's prudent that we adopt the amendment to Magnolia Dunes PUD for the overflow parking and clarifying the use of the motorcycles for the PUD. I think this is going to have less impact on the neighborhood and try to help out that community a little bit better than what they're currently being helped out now.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second, any further discussion?
Yeah, I got a comment. I believe Mr. Offer is trying to alleviate a parking issue in his property and move it away from the citizens, is what it sounds like to me, and he has the right to go the other way and clear property and put it closer to them. Is that what I understand? But I also understand restraints, restrictions, and time limits. And I hope that Mr. Alford and that group would get together and to make sure that these start times and end times are being enforced. And I'm talking about strictly enforced, because they have the right to have some peace and quiet too. Casey, I hear you. And I'm not across from it. You know, I have issues with noise in South Putnam. And that's all I ask the owner of a particular place is just honor your times, your start times and your shut-off times. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Pickens. Is any other comments? We have a motion and a proper second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, and we'll close that public hearing and move on to appointments. Does anybody have any appointments, Commissioner Chairman?
Mr. Chairman,
What?
You got a little confrontation going.
Where's our bailiff today? Well, how about going out there and bailiffing in between Skeet and the locks?
They're just talking.
Huh?
They're just talking.
Okay.
Yeah, but it needs to happen outside chambers.
They're outside.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any appointments, starting with Commissioner Rawls?
I have a question. I'm becoming aware that apparently Mr. Edenfield has not been making the planning, or not the ZBOA meetings.
I don't know, unless somebody
I-
has
I-
turned it in
I
or whatever.
became aware
We
from
have
a citizen.
Didn't we come up with a policy a while back that
Yeah.
said that the chairman needs to turn in bad attendance to us for review? And then after so many meetings that we remove them and find somebody else?
I believe that is correct, sir, and we've drafted, I know, 2 letters here recently of that, to that effect on different committees. So if there's an issue with attendance on another
No,
committee,
if it is, if you let me know, I'll get him replaced. So I'll reach out to him and find out if he's
You could
willing to
look
serve. But
into it for Commissioner Rawls, please.
I was told maybe as many as 3
So-
meetings in a row, and that doesn't help the committee.
Yes, sir.
that's great, we'll look into it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Goddard, do you have any today?
No, I have none.
Commissioner Pickens?
I have none, but I do have a comment. I brought it to the attention of the administration about a planning commission member that was having a lot of absences. Has that been addressed?
Yes, sir, that was one of the letters that I was referring to.
Okay, thank you. No, I have none. Yeah.
Commissioner Harvey?
I have none, but I also have a problem trying to fill a planning commission appointment. So if anybody out there, a zoning board of adjustment appointment, so, and a planning, we have a gentleman that doesn't seem like he wants to serve either, so. And it's due to the financials, but that can't be avoided, so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Before we move on to the county administrator's comments, got a couple of housekeeping issues that I'd like to move into. First would be, do we need a motion to cancel a second meeting in this month? I don't think that's been done yet.
Oh, we did last month, last meeting.
It was actually motioned and done? Okay, thank
It
you.
was on the
Excuse
consent
me.
agenda.
Just wanted to be sure. The next one is, I had asked the administrator, and I apologize for not asking you earlier about it, to look into a possible FAC ethics class to be held between now and the first of the year for anybody who haven't taken it yet this year, and do like the city did to us a couple of years ago and invite all the city's people to do it too, along with us, and look into a proposed cost of that. So have you had a chance to get to that yet?
Yes, sir, I have, and I apologize, when I got information back from them, you were out of town, and I didn't follow up with you, that's my bad. But yes, sir, they don't have the staff or the time to put one on in December. However, if we wanted to go out and find someone to put the class on ourselves, we'd be welcome to do that. It's my understanding that most of the commissioners have had their ethics training already this year, so they weren't able to do it. However, we can do it online, or we can find somewhere else to attend, or we can hire someone to come in and do it for us.
But to answer your question, the Florida League of Cities has a YouTube series they do. There's an attorney that does an ethics class
That's the one that taught it to us 2 years ago, right? Yeah, so, it's all right. Larry, Commissioner Harvey, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I kind of fell behind also on the ethics, and I did mine online. And truly, it was not a bad 5 hours of sitting. You know, you were able to take 3 hours and take 2 hours, and, you know, it wasn't bad at all. And I kind of was dreading it, and actually think I might like it more than going to someplace and doing it. So if you need it, it's available online.
Yeah, no problem. I knew it was.
Okay.
So, but some people like to take it online, some people like to go sit down in an afternoon. So I didn't know if it was a few $100s, if we could reciprocate like the city did to us a couple of years ago, but surely doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I just thought trying to be a good neighbor.
Maybe that's something we could do going forward, but the city is participate, have it here every year.
Yeah,
And
it's
invite
all right.
other agencies
All right
in.
by me, yeah, like I said, I was just trying to be a good neighbor. All right, so no ethics, scratch ethics class, Terry. The next thing would be the comments by the county administrator.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. Just want to talk about a couple of things that I keep hearing over and over in conversation throughout the meeting. I stopped counting at 4, to be honest with you, but I need to address a concern, and the concern is I want all 5 of my elected officials to understand that you're welcome to come and comment, meet, sit down and discuss any issues that you may have with your county administrator or your staff. It's been stated here on the record today and in an earlier meeting that we're not available, and that is just simply not factual. It's misleading to the commission, and it's misleading to the citizens of Putnam County. At no time has anyone been said they couldn't have a meeting. So I just want to make sure for the record that we all understand that if you have a comment or a concern and you want to come schedule some time, we're more than happy to sit down and talk to anybody at any time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Suggs. Lawyer Joe, I want to be the first to say we're going to miss you. Today's your last day, and we appreciate you working with us when you did, and I hope when you get down there, they call you Lawyer Joe.
I'll make it a point of telling them that.
You think they will?
Well, I can't say enough about just the experience of representing this board and serving the people of Putnam County. It's been a wonderful experience. It's really, this is obviously my last meeting, and it's bittersweet. I mean, obviously, Monroe County has, been my home, and I'm looking forward to that. But it's not without a certain sadness to leave Putnam County, because I've really, really enjoyed serving this community and interacting with the wonderful people that you have in this county and the wonderful staff here at the county. And you are well served by the dedicated public employees for this county, and it was just an honor and a privilege to work with the 5 of you and interact with our staff, who are just first rate. And I might add also with the other constitutional officers, the sheriffs here as well. It was a wonderful experience working with their office and working with your other constitutional officers as well. You've got a great team in this county, and I'm going to miss you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Mr.
Appreciate
Chairman,
you.
if I might, I don't think you're going to have to worry about taking action against CSX where you're going. On a hunch. But I'll tell you one thing interesting I found out with Monroe County. Part of that county actually is on the mainland of Florida, right?
That's correct, yes.
So how do you facilitate? Are y'all going to have offices all over the place? Or?
It's funny. The sheriff and I were talking about this at a meeting a while back, because the policing aspects are a real challenge down there, because you do have a part of it that's mostly in the Everglades and the Big Cypress and that. But it's a weird notch. You actually go through Dade to get into part of Monroe. The county does have satellite offices. The county seat is in Key West, but there are government centers in Marathon and in Plantation, which is up around Isla Mirada, and then in Key Largo as well. But it is a challenge for governance down there, because you've got a very narrow strip of land that extends over 100 miles. So it is a challenge, and they do their best to try to make sure that the meetings are held throughout the county to make sure that the citizens can have an opportunity to see their board in action and be able to participate in those meetings. But you can't change the geography, and you're right about the trains. They really haven't been running since the hurricane knocked out Flagler's operation, and they never rebuilt. They put the road over the trestles instead. So,
Good luck.
thank you very much. It's been a pleasure working with all of you.
Thank you. We'll move into commissioner comments. Commissioner Rawls.
I've been getting a lot of phone calls and having conversations with folks regarding fire and EMS. And as I've stated before, I think this is something that we should be discussing at every meeting, at every workshop, taking a look at the needle and moving it forward. There's a grave concern from a lot of the volunteers and paid staff as to what the future of our fire and EMS is. And I really think, under 125, it's our responsibility to provide the public safety. I think we need to take the opportunity, starting next month, to look at revamping our fire service, having some sort of hybrid system that incorporates volunteer and paid folks, and get our fire and EMS merged into one group and not two separately paid groups. I'm a little perplexed, and I guess I don't fully understand the why, but the 6% pay raise that we gave to the employees has not hit the fire rescue. I'm being told that they're being told that they have to wait until they ratify a contract, but in my estimation, this pay raise was long overdue. It supersedes 2 or 3 contracts probably. But I really think that they deserve the pay raise, as do all employees, and it shouldn't be tied to the ratification of a bargaining agreement that's been being kicked around for a few years. I attended the Northeast Florida Regional Council meeting the other day, and the gentleman left, but we do have, each county will have a person assigned to them. So he's asked to be able to speak to the commission at some point in the near future and talk about resiliency and planning going forward. So I think that's going to be helpful. One of my concerns when I first sat down with them, when they came down to educate me on the regional council as a board member, I said, look, you're not looking around. Jacksonville's pulled out. Clay County's not participating. Why are we participating? And Ms. Payne said, we're getting that a lot. And so the answer is you have a new board of directors, you have new direction, you have new leadership. They ask that we just be patient, and that we will know real soon the why that we participate. But from what I saw the other day, it looks like there will be a lot of advantages for us to participate in that and continue to fund that. Melrose Christmas Parade is this Saturday. I plan on going. Porch Fest was this past Saturday.
This Saturday.
This Saturday.
10 o'clock.
Porch Fest was this past Saturday. I went there and helped kick that thing off. It was they had quite a few people showing up from not just locals, from a lot of out-of-towners. Were you there, Joe? You're shaking your head, yeah.
Yeah, there was a band operating across from my apartment, so I had a front row seat. I had to just step out on the balcony and take in the show, and it was really great. A lot happened in the South Historic District.
My son was allowed to sell beer and wine tickets. That was interesting to watch him do his math. They averaged $5,000 a piece. And then the other thing I wrote down here is the East Palatka Fire Station cost. I'm trying to wrap my head around the cost of that fire station compared to the Bostwick. I'm really not prepared to have a big conversation, but I would encourage you guys to take a look at the two. You've got close to a $400,000 difference, and the one in Bostwick, has a fire sprinkler system that's backed up by a pump and a holding tank, which wasn't required for East Palatka. East Palatka had its own water system that was taken out to it. So I think we need to dig into that and find out what the bus was, because my understanding when they did Bostwick was it was supposed to be the rubber stamp that we go around and use as a model for a fire station around the county. But we can't have a 400,000, basically a 45% cost difference between a like-for-like product. So otherwise, that's it.
Okay, Commissioner Goddard.
Well, I'm going to say I've had the opportunity to be in many of our parades, Crescent City, out in Interlochen, and of course Palatkos. And of course we got the Melrose coming up, and never have found out when is Palatka.
The 21st.
Okay, the 21st.
At noon.
21st at noon. So, as I say every time, and honestly, if you're not getting out and seeing Putnam County, you're just wasting your time. Putnam County has so much to offer, great people, great things. There's something going on everywhere in Putnam County, especially on the weekends. Anyway, enjoy yourself, and Merry Christmas, and Mr. Joe, we're going to miss you.
Thank you, Commissioner Goddard. Commissioner Pickens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Turner. Also, Joe, we wish you well and enjoyed working with you. And send us some pictures of all that beautiful water down there. So I just want to recognize and commend Angel Dukes, the chairman or president of the Crescent City Lions Club, for hosting their annual Christmas Bazaar Friday evening and Saturday. They also incorporated and brought in a small carnival to the city of Crescent City, which was a tremendous hit. And the parade was a good parade, and I appreciate Commissioner Goddard coming down and riding with me and my wife, and Administrator Suggs and Julie for also participating in the parade. And then also that evening, the Crescent City Yacht Club down at the public boat ramp had fireworks and a lighted boat parade, so it was well attended. So it was a pretty big weekend. And Commissioner Goddard, as you asked, the town of Plaque will have their parade at noon, the 21st. So we'll line up on Maxwell Street around 11:30. Just need to know, I think you sent an email to the town that we may have three entries, so we'll just confirm that, and I'll get with the mayor. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Commissioner Pickens. Commissioner Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll do this real quick. Interlochen Christmas celebration was a great success, and appreciate everybody's participation there. We'll be attending the FAC Trust, the Insurance Trust meeting, Thursday and Friday this week. I am on that board up there. Just finished my leadership studies. The Advanced County Commission at UF and University of Florida is going to take a really more active role in the studies of FAC. Looking forward to that. And if you'll just allow me to say Merry Christmas to everyone, and also Lawyer Joe, we're going to miss you, and I appreciate your time here. I do want to say that I'm not going to start a debate, but for the listening audience, we had a speaker in our public comment, had 3 minutes to speak about an issue that's dear to me, and that's Lake Ocklawaha and the watershed out there. The water has drawn down in West Putnam. My lake has went down 3 feet since the drawdowns happened. All that water is connected, and some people would like to tear that down when they're trying to build a reservoir for Lake Okeechobee to clean up the Everglades. I cannot put my fingers around this. No algae blooms, 21 billion gallons of water, 19 feet above sea level, and a great environment, and people go there too, even when the drawdown doesn't happen. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that.
Thank you. I've already thanked Lawyer Joe for being here, and I got to start out with that, the choice of being chairman. With that, if there's no more to come before the board at this time, I will adjourn the meeting.
Good deal. Thank you.